So ready, in fact, that I pressed go live is how ready I am. And it worked!
I'm very proud.
Oh, thank you for being proud of my level of readiness.
Yeah,
Very impressive.
It was lively of you.
So it was. So today we're joined with the one, the only, L or J, who we think is L or J.
Well,
Say
actually-
hello!
Yay.
Real quick.
Here I am.
I have a serious question for you.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Is it L or J?
Or is it Lord?
Which are
Well, it is L or J. You've told us that in the past, but I'm not going to stop from calling you Lord.
Well, no, I think you misunderstood my
Okay.
question. I'm asking him, which one is he?
Oh,
L or
okay.
J?
That's a good question. And who's the other?
So
Who are
that's a
you?
very interesting question, because the reason I'm called L or J is because me and my sister used to use that account, and my name starts with an L and her name starts with a J, so we called it L or J.
Oh.
So keeping
So
that in
technically,
mind,
that's your
I'm now curious for how you came up with your Discord username.
Okay, but first I have to answer Kamui's question.
Okay.
So I am the L in that equation.
Oh.
If you're wondering.
I'm glad that you actually had an actual answer.
Yeah. Discord username, yeah, that's yeah, so this is so stupid.
For some
Okay,
reason,
so
I can't see it.
Herman Trout is sort of a version of the last name of my favorite character from Breaking Bad, Mike Ehrmantraut.
So wait, I'm sorry, I blanked out. Their last name isn't Herman Trout, is it? That's their whole last name?
No, it's not spelled that way.
Okay.
It's not spelled that way. You can look it up, if you see
well,
Breaking Bad,
what's their first name? Is her name like Simon Herman Trout? like what are we working with here? Like Bethany Herman Trout? That's such a weird last name.
It's not. It's not spelled like. It's like spelled like Ehrmantraut.
Oh.
Like it's like a German name.
Ooh.
And the character's name is Mike Ehrmantraut. He's like the meme. He's like the finger guy. That's who he is.
Speaking of,
if you know the meme.
Speaking of Germany, is your penguin from Germany?
No, that's just an image that I found that I thought was funny.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, do you know where you found it from?
I don't remember.
No, real quick.
Man, this is a very dynamic discussion.
Well, yeah, hold on. I have more questions. So I don't know if I'm just mixing you up with someone else, but if I'm not mistaken, it was you who used to have the Obito profile where he was like hugging his knees. There might be a different person though, but I thought it was L or J.
So a long time ago, like maybe a year or two ago, yes, I did have.
Okay, that was you. I knew I recognized you.
I've had different ones, but I thought eventually that like it was like a bit redundant to have a Toby thing because everyone had one. So
every time Kamui says L or J, I hear Elder J.
Well, how old is Elder J?
I mean, maybe he's like Jay the Great's dad, for as far as we know.
Sorry.
Anyway, so next question.
Are you an elder?
No.
So we'll go back and forth, Kamui, playing 20 questions, except it's different questions for both of us. You've been on the podcast before.
Yeah,
very briefly. Yes, I was in a bit of a rush, so I wasn't able to stick around, and I was a bit caught off guard. But now I'm prepared.
I forget which one it was on, but please remind us.
Oh, it was really quick. It was like the beginning for like 10 minutes or something.
I was like listening in on Discord, and you guys just invited me, and I was like, "What? What?"
Okay, fair enough.
Huh? So
we tend to do that.
Yes.
you like to talk with people, so that's nice.
Just like Shadow. Is this the main chat you guys look at? Not really, Shadow, but thanks for joining the Discord. Are you new here? Did they join? Space, did you put the thing in the chat? Where did you come from, Shadow? Who are you? Never seen that name. But anyways, I put the link in chat. Well, you did. Okay. Well, that's a separate factor from Shadow being here, considering there is nobody who joined or left since I checked it last.
It might just be someone who's been there but doesn't usually talk. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or they changed their name.
That's fair as well.
You have a lot of people who do that.
So, Hell Lord J. Okay, well, this sort of ruins the bit that I was going to do a little bit later, but how long have you been watching? Because you've been here forever, for like a year or two or so. I don't know exactly how long.
Yeah, that's about right. I don't remember exactly. I think I started watching you around when TBV started coming out.
Okay, interesting.
Around when part 1 ended.
That's
and you guys were very
the podcast.
Yeah, well, not quite.
Slightly before.
I know. I remember, and to be precise, I got it from listening to Kamui's videos, and he was talking about, that he had a podcast. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I went and checked it out.
So you're exclusively from Kamui.
I do shout it out.
Well, you did. I don't know about anymore.
See, he's living in Peru.
No, okay. To be fair, Herman, you are the expectation. In fact, you are the, I don't want to say minority. I don't know what the word would be here. Minority in terms of expectations. The minimal, even less than, there was a threshold here. I'm using random words, but Kamui, when I first started this, since you have a way bigger and more active YouTube channel than I did, I expected not only a bigger audience in general, but a lot larger of a ratio of people to have come from you than from me. But it's honestly been like pretty dead even. Like there's no way to check the numbers, but just for what it feels like.
Yeah, it's it's astonishingly and depressingly low how many people came here. They do not care.
Except for Herman.
Well, I did.
Yeah, except for LRJ.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so it was around the end of part 1, and you guys were, huge fans of that stuff. So, it was fun to listen to.
Okay. Well, you're right. We were huge fans of that. And what a great segue to your comment, since you were a huge fan of us. Until 2 streams ago, when you left us a couple comments that we responded to last stream. Yeah. So why did you change?
Yeah, thanks for responding, by the way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So why did you change to become our hater?
I don't know, bro. I disagree with you guys sometimes, and that's about it. I like you guys. You're cool.
Okay.
But you're a hater.
So it's fine. It's fine to disagree, but why are you so wrong?
Well, that is a subjective statement. Well,
I'm glad that you say that, because I can prove even that wrong. So getting to the comments of our last stream, of which case you realized that we've reacted to your comments, so you left new comments reacting to our reaction, of which case we're reacting to your reaction, So your profile picture is indeed a penguin. I was right on that. We also have... Yeah, Kodachi is, I guess we'll just go in order of like top to bottom instead of the order that you actually posted them in. Unless you wanted us to go in the order that you posted them.
I responded to a couple things you guys said about mainly what I said. So that's what these comments are mainly for.
Okay. But, so, I like how you say, yeah, Kodachi is also old. But my claim was that Ikimoto, regardless of age, is greedy. You had nothing to say about that here.
Well, I think you're making an assumption when it comes to that. I mean, yes, you did point out that's generally how it works in Japan with mangaka and their, with their editors and stuff like that. Not editors, sorry, assistants. But like, you don't have any direct proof that that's Ikimoto's situation specifically. And it doesn't really negate the fact that being a mangaka is a difficult job in general. So it doesn't.
Also,
would you count Ikimoto's words as proof? Sorry, go ahead.
I'm gonna throw a curveball at you.
Okay.
It's possible he's not greedy. He just nobody wants to be his assistant.
Okay, that's not where I thought where you were going with it. I thought you were gonna go. It's possible he's not just greedy. He's stupid.
So that's what I mean when I say you guys are kind of mean to him. That's all I'm saying.
We are. No.
We don't deny that.
I mean, just listen to our.
I guess we're in agreement.
We are at this point going out of our way
to be overly mean. Yeah.
And he doesn't deserve it.
All right,
but it's funny.
Now, to be fair, Ikimoto, as I said last stream, has publicly complained about not having a lot of editors. Thoughts?
Maybe he just doesn't know that it's under his control. Wait, what if he just doesn't know that he's the one who has to do it? So he just doesn't know that nobody told him.
I love that.
So, I mean,
Kodachi's actually the one who hired the current assistants, and because Kodachi left, now Yuki was like, oh, damn, like, what do I do?
So I don't remember like him making that statement. I'm sure you're right about that. But like we don't know exactly about his situation. So it's hard to really make judgments based on that, to be honest.
Okay, well, what about the fact that you say, but he only had to write, not draw and write at the same time? So let's remember.
Yeah.
Because this is a justification for why the quality may or may not have decreased over time. Especially when Kodachi left. Let's remember, Kishimoto had to write and draw at the same time, and not only was it objectively better, but ignoring that subjectively, but it was also produced on a much, much crazier schedule.
Sure, but he was also a way younger guy who was, that was... That's pretty.
See,
I think that's pretty important.
Okay, I had a feeling you were going to say that. The problem is, these are two entirely disconnected ideas. The age does not have to do with both writing and drawing, or just drawings. I don't think the age is impacting his writing.
All I meant was that Kodachi's job is an easier one than Ikimoto has now, to draw and do the story at the same time. That's all I'm saying. Which therefore means that he allocates less time and resources to each job because he doesn't have as much time for them. Whereas Kodachi had all the time in the world to think about the story.
I agree that Ikimoto has more on his plate now because of himself. But
I'm saying.
I would not go as far as to say the art, without knowing, just is harder than the writing. As far as we know, Kodachi spent as much physical work and time on it as Ikimoto did, if not more. Plus, I would say that it's more mentally strenuous. If you want to say that writing's the more physically strenuous task, fine. I would say mentally, I think the writing would be a lot more difficult as a job than the art.
I think we can just both agree that doing two jobs at once is harder than doing one job.
Which is why he has editors that he's supposed to hire himself.
Well, if you say so.
Okay. Moving on. We have at 3:10:29.
My length, I tend to write a lot.
Sorry, what?
Forgive my length. I tend to write a lot.
Oh, well. We'll be getting to that in this comment. But until then. So at 3:10:29, what were we saying?
Her goal of becoming a Kage.
Becoming Hokage.
Becoming a Kage.
Okay, so it was me and Keto. Talking about
Damn it,
Sarada.
thought I checked that comment, but I guess I did have some errors, in fact.
Okay, so if you wanted to take it away, what did you say here?
Okay, wait, I need to... can barely see it, it's a bit small.
Oh, here, I'll zoom in a little bit more. Oh, no, I can't. Okay, that's as small as I can make it. This is your chance to correct the errors.
I think I can read that. Let's see if I can. Oh.
I could put a screenshot of it in chat if you need me to.
Okay, here we go. I got it.
Okay.
So, I say, ha! You know I'm right about that, Oodie. Just because I understand the Sarada Sumori conversation before you doesn't make it untrue, LOL. Because you had said that it was, that my comment about their conversation was written before the officials came out, and you said, well, therefore, how can you tell that your interpretation is right? And I'm basically saying, well, how do you know yours is right? So that's what I'm saying there. So yeah, and then that's what, yeah. So the next part, that's that part.
Okay.
And then, by the way, just because Sarada didn't literally say the word conflicted, rather, doesn't mean she isn't, because you had said in that stream that she wasn't conflicted. She was conflicted in her feelings for Boruto and whether she felt for him as a comrade or in a romantic way. That's being conflicted. You can say she's being confused. That's fine, but it's the same thing. So yeah, I mean, I also say you don't have to like her arc here, because I don't necessarily love it either. But it's, you at least try to get the full picture of it.
Well, I think that last sentence was worded a little bit more meanly than how you're saying it here.
Well,
a little bit of a tag on there, don't you think?
I am.
But either way, so to address this, the way I made it come across was clearly different from how you interpreted from my intent. So I was almost in a way given the benefit of the doubt. So that's not what I was saying. What I was saying is that there is a different interpretation between the official and the fan translations.
Yes, there is, to an extent, but it's also like clearly overall the same thing. At least the translations that you guys were reading. I'm pretty sure. So
well,
like I understood what like Ikimoto's going with Sarada's character in that scene like pretty easily, even if the dialogue was different. But
there was only like one or two things in particular that I don't even remember what they were, but I remember there was like two things where it's kind of subtle, but it does lead you in a different direction. But I don't remember exactly. I think it was the one where Sarada said she felt like a loser versus whatever the other version was. I remember that, and there was like one other thing.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, we get the general gist.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
By the way, am I the only one who thinks that the word, like her saying "loser" in the Viz version is like a bit harsh? Like,
yeah, well, I think it's harsh.
Kind of goofy to me. Like, I'm a total loser for thinking about someone I care about. I don't know. It just seems a little strange.
Yeah, for confronting her feelings that she's confused on. Like, what?
I'm fine with the idea of her like thinking that her conflicting feelings interrupt with her goal of becoming Hokage. I just wish it had been established a little better.
Why are you okay with that?
Well, that's the problem, though. Well, ignoring Oodie's question for a moment, it's wrong. It wasn't established previously. She was, even in TBB itself, she was only shown being very headstrong and confident about her Hokage goal with no, hiccups in the process. So it was just, I'm going to be Hokage. There's no, she's yelling at Shikamaru, she's yelling at Kawaki. There is no doubt in her mind. So the only interpretation you could have, if you're going to say Sarada's not bullshitting, is that her confliction only started chapter 6 at the soonest, when she hugged Boruto at the soonest, if not when she talked to Sumire 2 chapters ago. It's not been
Well-
going on for years. Like she's saying in her conversation with Sumire, she's implying, yeah, I felt conflicted for the past like 5 years, you know, training with Boruto and stuff. But she wasn't.
Well, the reason I said what I did was that someone can always can say something and think something else. They can be conflicted internally without showing it out.
But like we were only
So
shown.
I'm saying is
No, so- What you're
I'm saying
describing...
that if it was
Sorry, please finish your thought.
no, I was going to say all I meant was that if it should have been established earlier in order for us to understand her mental state a bit better. She can still say the same things. I just want to know her internal thoughts a bit more.
Yeah. So there's a specific reason, though, in the writing itself of why you're saying what you just said, that you wish it was established earlier. Because what this just adds dimension to Sarada's character. This isn't a character trait. This is a contradiction, and that's not inherently a bad thing. In fact, contradictions are often used intentionally in writing to be a good thing, to show a character's true nature. That's how you get to their hidden nature in the first place, when they're pressured, how they act on the surface versus how they actually mean, how they truly feel. Because they're not just going to say it out loud. You have to interpret it based on their actions, because they themselves don't know. They're trying to figure it out themselves. So the thing with Sarada, like you're saying, it's not clear early on. It's just a contradiction.
It's just a bit
Yeah,
subtle. It's not subtle. It's just a bit sudden, I should say. Whereas it shouldn't really feel sudden. We should think back and go, "Oh, that's why she was acting like this and doing this." That's what it sort of, in my opinion, should be.
So, okay,
But
to clarify...
instead, it's just sort of clumsily.
To clarify, I don't think... I can speak for myself. I'm going to say I don't think Kamui as well. So I don't think me and Kamui think that it's a bad idea to have a writing idea concept in the story at some point in time about Sarada feeling conflicted, and maybe that in some kind of way holds her back from being Hokage. There's nothing wrong with that. You can say that's a good direction to go in the writing, depending on how you do it. Our problem is that's clearly not what they were doing going into this. So we would both be okay with what they did here, if they actually did it right, if they had led up into it in a more clear, consistent kind of way. Sure, there's nothing...
like back in part 1. You can't even start TBV with it. This would need to be there in part 1. Because she's clearly indicating that these feelings, these conflicted feelings, for even with the Hokage stuff, is all the time. Ever since, really, she started being on board with his team, pretty much. But that's not... It's kind of like a similar thing as the Himawari thing with them. You know, we make fun of her preconceived biases all the time. But, like, no, obviously in the manga, she's just not even a character. But if you use the anime, because they're supposed to be the same continuity,
no, they're not.
Everything Crumb is saying about Himawari just contradicts the anime. It just does not.
But they're two separate continuities, Kamui. Come on.
Tell that to
that.
the official people in charge.
No, they're two separate. They've always been two separate continuities. They're just supposed to sort of be like going in the same direction.
That's the problem. It's not the same direction if it contradicts her entire character.
Well,
it's not the same direction. It's a new direction now. One's going one way, one's going the opposite.
I mean, that's fine. Like, that's a fine thing to say. But I, it's not really a problem with the manga itself, because the manga should only really be consistent with itself, in my opinion. So.
Well, they should be communicating.
The creators disagree with you.
Well, either way, I don't really care. Like, I think continuity problems between both of them, like, I feel like they should just be different anyway. I don't think it's a huge issue. I agree with you, Kamui, that they have, like, situations where, like, Mitsuki's arc, like, is repeated in TBV, for example, or as it was in the anime.
So you think
that's, like, a little awkward.
So
like, what is the anime going to do, like, with that? Or, Kishimoto, like...
Well, that's the thing. That's why they need to communicate, because it's like they're telling us, hey, you need to watch both, because they're both the same story, just they're slightly different continuities, but it's the same idea. But then if you have these conflicting, not even just plot points, but story beats, it's like, why aren't they communicating? Because now you have, Kishimoto's just throwing in this character for Mitsuki's manga because it wasn't there. Okay. Well, what's the anime supposed to do? Like, is he talking to the anime like, "Hey, I'm gonna do this. Is that okay?" Probably not. Probably just like, yeah, go for it, guys. Do what you want to do." So they're just gonna remove the Mitsuki scene because he already had the character arc. He's gonna repeat the same words he already did. That's probably what they're gonna do. It's just
But also,
Yeah, it's
so do you think that there's no need, or do you not even want them to address the fact that Mitsuki can just use Sage Mode in the manga now? You just couldn't do it in part
I
1
do.
or the anime?
I don't know what they're gonna do with that. They're probably gonna write in a thing where, like, a training thing where Mitsuki learns how to use the Sage Power or something like that. But I'm not sure exactly what they're gonna do with it.
well,
Sure
from
do
the
have your
manga's
hopes up on that.
perspective, though, but from the manga's perspective, you would be asking, never mind the anime, he would still be asking, why didn't Mitsuki use it at any point? Because from the manga only perspective, it has no downside.
Yeah, that's
And
kind of, it's true. It's kind of weird. There is an implication though that, like, when Mitsuki's older, he can use it in a more easy way.
See,
kind of just makes
okay,
sense.
but
like,
no, because that doesn't work though. Because both things that you just said to like get around it have to do with the time skip. He uses it in the prophecy arc.
Yeah, I know he does, but it's like very briefly, and like I would have a scene where after he uses it, he's visibly tired or
But
something.
Kishimoto doesn't have
indicate
that.
that. I know it
Yeah.
doesn't, and so it's. I'm not saying it's like perfect, but I'm saying you could have a reason. Like it's not an inconceivable notion. Like there's.
But even then, though, whereas I completely agree. Spoiler alert: my Mitsuki rewrite that I'll put out one day in like 10 years does include that. But ignoring that for a moment, so not only is that not there, there's no mention of it ever being a problem. So again, we don't see him get tired. We don't know that he does get tired in manga because even in the Mitsuki one shot, he actually deactivates the stage mode, but there's no line of dialogue indicating that it breaks down his body. It's actually anime only.
Yeah.
However,
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Because it's in the Mitsuki one shot that actually came out before the Boruto manga even started. So it's literally pre-Boruto manga. It's before the series. So and Mitsuki's a canon character, so like he has it, and it's never addressed why he's not using it. It's never addressed that there is a flaw to it that he has to overcome. So from a manga only perspective, you're like, why didn't he use it against Boro? Why didn't he use it here? Why didn't he use it there? And you don't know.
Then we have to default back to the anime to look for a reason, in which case they tell us, which contradicts the manga.
Yeah.
I think like Boro, like if you use Sage Mode on him, like he just regenerate attacks. Like brute force isn't really useful for against Boro in a way. But it is a little weird that he doesn't use it in that fight. I guess it's kind of strange.
He could have just used it for multiple reasons. Just attack him a billion times until he gets the core, or just more distractions. Or when Boro's giant and Boruto's about to get choke slammed to death, Mitsuki could have done what he did versus Deepa and save him, and then attack giant Boro, who's not regenerating anymore. There's a lot of times where he could have done something, but just doesn't.
I mean, to be fair, in the series, there's a lot of times where a character could have used a power they don't, but either way.
Yeah, but the problem is in Mitsuki's case, he specifically uses that power to save Boruto when he's about to die in the end. And he's not doing it there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a point that I basically agree with you, essentially, I would say.
Okay. But back to this point. So the Viz translations, the official and the fan translations, did not come out at the same time. The fan translations came out first before the official translations because there's two different interpretations between the fan translation and the official. Sorry, what were you saying?
I was just saying they came out like really early this month. It was like 5 days.
It was
or something.
crazy.
It was crazy.
Yeah. But because there's two different interpretations between the fan translations and the official translations, and the fan translations came out first and the officials came out afterwards, we could only base our interpretation based on the only...
Interpretation?
Whatever. Our interpretation based on the only source we had. The only thing released. The one interpretation. So it's not that we were misinterpreting the fan translations. We were correctly interpreting the fan translations, and because the official translations are different, that means inherently we have to be misinterpreting the official translations. In which case, we can go back to it when it comes out and see both and decide which one it probably is. But at the time, we only had one, and we were interpreting the one correctly.
Yeah, but there's there's nuance in this discussion, right? Like, you can read the spoilers and be like, or the leaked chapter, and you can say, well, I mean, I'm not sure about these translations. They're not official. They might be more accurate for all I know. They might be less accurate. So let's not take them too literally. But at the same time, I understand.
On the bright side, they're usually more accurate.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So that's part of the problem.
You can do that, but
so unless we take the raws and just translate it ourselves, we can't be saying the official is any more reliable than the fan translations. If anything, the fan translations are likely to be more reliable as it is. And that's honestly, that's also understandable for a couple different reasons. Just to put my 2 cents in here. First of all, they're going to be more so directly translating the Japanese, so they're not going to be localizing it, which is what Viz does. Or Viz will just make stuff up, adding flowery, poetic, whatever. I don't know why, if they want to boost their agenda, or because their company isn't allowed to do blah, blah, blah. They're filtering it, they're censoring it, whatever they got to do. Or maybe their translators just suck. I don't know. But Salad and Bolt, shout out that person. We'll talk more on them later. But they do their own translations. They give justifications and explanation for why they do what they do. And I can just check it myself if there's any concern.
Yes, you can.
So there you go.
So I guess it goes on by a case by case basis, right? I mean, some sentences, because obviously they're very hard languages to translate and for, right? And so you tend to have people who either know English better or know Japanese better, and therefore are going to have different. They're going to have a way of, it's hard to be perfect, obviously. But that's why it is important to compare 2 versions, I would say. Which is why I would wait to react to the chapter until the officials come out, but I understand that that's unrealistic because otherwise everyone would be spoiling it already, or know what happens already. So
yeah, and again, even then, I don't think there's any need to wait, since the quality of the chapter isn't any lesser if you wait, except for like the 2 times it just was the physical pictures of it. But the translations are probably going to be better. So you should.
Well, they are now, actually. They are now. Like a few months ago, like a year ago, there was like terrible translations.
I love them, though. I will never forget. Or what is the issue? All the memes.
So yes.
I miss them.
But it's hard to read the damn thing when you're trying to understand the sentence. So I much prefer these new guys who do it.
Well, the thing is with that, even then, there was like 2 or 3 different translations of it back then. And so you're even back then getting a lot more likely closer translation than what Viz is doing just by cross-comparing alone, if not just for the fact that they're probably more or less directly translating it without understanding the rules itself.
Yeah, sure. By the way, fun fact for you guys. The translators for current TBV, there's a guy who does the lettering, the guys that does the translation. Mm-hmm. They've been doing this since... I think they've been credited since the Delta fight of Part 1. Mm. So it's really weird because the translations up until... well, that's right. The translations up until the Prophecy arc, I think, were very solid as far as my memory.
They weren't making random typos like Inu Shikacho or Shinjitsu or powerlessness in a way that doesn't make sense.
It's so bad. They keep talking. Like, there's this one time where they're like, mind transfer jutsu. I'm like, it's not the mind transfer jutsu. It's mind transmission jutsu. What are you talking about?
I'm glad you're bringing that up.
Wrong. Just the beginning. That's always been wrong. Boruto. They've always got it wrong.
I think they might just have lost interest in their job, doing their job right. It's really.
I think so.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
So here's a quote from Naruto from the Forest of Death. When I found this, Kamui, you know I was ecstatic at the time. So again, Forest of Death, this is when Team Inoshika Cho is fighting the sound trio. So Dosu says, and this is like midway through the fight towards the end-ish, so I see your shadow, or excuse me, so I see your shadow paralysis jutsu has captured my teammate. And then even L or J, I'll let you take over Shikamaru's line since I did Dosu so perfectly.
Sure. Shadow possession jutsu. Get it right.
Whatever. So Naruto, it's as a series itself, is making fun of Boruto, who just can't get it right. Naruto knows when it gets it right and wrong, and they call it out. Can't even do that.
Did they mess up the shadow transmission?
Dosu does.
That one's an iffy one because I wrote a comment replying about this, but there might be a inconsistency in Naruto for this, but to my memory, so I know that, for example, Shikamaru's dad, Shikaku, calls it shadow paralysis. He calls it by the old name. Yeah. And every time someone says shadow paralysis, to my memory, they don't do the whole mimic the movements of the user thing. But when Shikamaru says shadow possession, they do that. I don't know if Boruto ever messes this up either. But
that's interesting.
Just off memory, Shikamaru always says shadow paralysis jutsu, and they don't mimic its movements. So, and I looked in the data book. There is no distinction in the data book. Never once mentioned. But purely going off of the observations, they technically might be two different jutsu. Shikamaru's just dumb in the Forest of Death, or Kishimoto hadn't made up the rules yet. But it's possible shadow possession does the mimicking. Paralysis just doesn't do that. That might be a
Kamui, why would they have two jutsu? One that does the same thing but less.
Well, so there's two answers you can give. One is that again, it's the old name, the new name. The new one just might be better. Or a second is that different utility. There's probably times where you don't want them to mimic your movements, and other times where you.
Well, like as an example, let's just say Shikamaru had the choice in the Keen fight. It's gonna make knocking out Keen so much easier if she just doesn't throw a shuriken at Shikamaru. Obviously, that was Shikamaru's plan to make Shikamaru like hit the wall behind Keen harder, based on reacting to that because he has to. But like, if he could just throw the kunai at her neck, he'd probably just choose that. It's easier. But
yeah, so it could be a Raikiri Chidori situation, but like you said, it's not really mentioned anywhere.
I'm pretty sure Kamui is right, though.
It's entirely fan theory, basically. I've never heard anyone else talk about it besides myself, but
but I'm pretty sure you are right. I don't know if they say anywhere, actually, it's now called the Shadow Possession Jutsu. I don't remember that, but I could just be completely not remembering, which is completely fine.
Well, so in Konoha Crush, when Shikamaru is fighting those sound Jonin, they call it Shadow Possession Jutsu, or Paralysis Jutsu again. And Shikamaru's like, yeah, if you want to call it by that old name, now it's called Shadow Possession Jutsu.
Oh, really? I don't remember that.
Yeah, at least in the English dub. I don't know if that's the Cartoon Network version of the English dub, mind you. I don't know what's changed in the other version.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was not as reliable. But...
Yeah, either way, that's Ino-Shikacho. I mean, that's just Shikamaru. This just doesn't apply to Ino, who just has two different jutsus. They just canonically are confirmed not the same jutsu, and Boruto's getting it wrong.
So different. The thing is that they're so different. Like, they're nothing. They're not similar at all.
Exactly, which makes it worse.
There's no mind transferring going on.
It's so.
You just Google it. Like, it takes a second. I really don't understand how that gets through. That's so embarrassing.
It's like it's in the name.
No, but also I can't remember.
Mind-boggling.
I think we did check the raws, and it might have just been raw. It was. I don't remember what we found when we checked the raws. If Hikimoto got it wrong, the translators got it wrong, but one of them got it wrong.
Hey, either Hikimoto or Viz.
Hikimoto's weird because Ikimoto's weird because he remembers super specific things, and then he like forgets super obvious things. I really don't understand how his memory works, because I think he views Naruto like as like that thing he worked on previously, like, right? So his memory on it may not be as strong, which would be fair, but you can always just look things up. Like there's the internet.
Just read it, chat. Oh, you forgot Ibiki's character trait?
Exactly.
Good thing he's there for 3 chapters to find out. Like, oh look.
Well, that's an example of, I think he just ignored Ibiki's sort of thing.
But that doesn't make sense, because then why bring in Ibiki as the person to do it? Why not have some other nameless, faceless interrogator, or just a different main character? Why bring back Ibiki to ruin him?
Because he's the guy he'd already designed and was already there, and
well, who says he designed him?
No, I mean, like, he didn't have to make a new design.
Okay, but then why not just use a main character? Exactly. And Hammer's the one that took him in.
I'm not trying to justify him. I'm just saying why he might have done that. Okay.
Okay.
So, like, I'm not sure. Like, sometimes he forgets things. I think sometimes he just purposefully omits things. I'm not sure.
Well, I do agree. I do think a lot of times he forgets things, but I do think he's intentionally trying to do his own story that is restricting him, because he's set in the Naruto Boruto universe and he can't escape that. He wants to do his own story. That's what it feels like.
Maybe a little bit. I mean, I'm sure that's partly true. Yeah.
Yeah, like he probably just doesn't want Sakura to be Sarada's mom, so he pretends she isn't, but she is.
I'm very confused about the Sakura situation, because like she didn't show up for the longest time, and we were like, okay, I guess he's just not using her. That's fine, I guess. But he put her in there for like 2 chapters. So I part of me is like, okay, there's no way he's not going to use her for something later, right? Like, this is ridiculous. Why would he bring her in just to be like the person who talks about like medical stuff? But maybe that's just all it is. Maybe she's just there to talk medical stuff, which is kind of insane to me, considering how many
That's
things
the thing, though. It has to be, because if she was going to have a bigger role, ignoring the fact of why didn't they have her do anything previously, like the Hidari situation.
She healed Inoji.
Why wouldn't they just start building up to it?
Yeah,
I don't know. Small thing, it's like an awkward tension between Sarada and her, where they look at each other weird, or subtle things. Why isn't he building that? He's not. He's just having her be the doctor, which tells me she's not going to do anything. Or if they do something later, it's just going to be bad, because you're going to be like, oh, why didn't they do anything previously?
Well, yeah, I mean, if they do something later, I'll be happy, but it wouldn't be as good as it could have been, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really weird.
Okay, so I think it's about time we move on to the main enchilada. So,
hell yeah.
The first comment you said, and you said this is one comment of several, which we've already proven that to be true. I think this is, well, actually, okay. Well, we could do this one real quick, so we just talked about it. Yes, I agree that Viz is terrible and bad and stupid, and all these translators should be fired. LOL, they can't spell. Okay, to the main enchilada. So, I guess we'll just take it a little bit at a time. But since you're here, you might as well be the one to say it.
Okay, so you guys go on about how bad it is for Momoshiki to despair and stuff. But really, why is that a bad thing? I've already outlined why this is consistent for his character, and I can do that more if you want. Plus, it could be a potentially interesting direction for his and Boruto's dynamic going forward. Kamui, you keep saying he makes him a bad villain, but like, what does that mean? Like, realistically speaking, like, what qualifies a bad villain? It could be like.
I'll tell you right now. What is a villain? A character who does evil actions that affect the world. What is Momoshiki doing? Literally nothing. He's not being a villain if he does nothing.
Well, he's not being a villain yet. I mean, he could definitely do evil things.
He is a villain. One of the
villains. Anyway,
one of the 2 main villains, but he's not being a villain. Boruto's well, assuming he's not lying, assuming he's telling the truth.
I don't think he's lying.
Would be convincing him to be a villain.
Well, you're not theoretically wrong, but I don't think that's a problem, if that makes sense. I think that's just fine. And then, what's the next part? Oh, yeah. So, Momoshiki's intelligent, with information, after all. I mean, he knows all about all Shinjutsu and everything
okay.
like that.
Before that, okay, I did want to do this one paragraph at a time, so we'll get down to this in a minute, because there's a lot to go over here. So,
okay.
So I guess we'll just start at this end one here. So, am I the be-all, end-all authority on what makes a good villain? No,
Right.
but would you consider Eric Edson to be?
Who's that?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Okay, so he actually has this MFA, that's his master's in screenwriting, and the fine arts, to be exact. So, as you know, psychology is rooted in screenwriting and vice versa. So, would you consider someone who has objectively spent a lot more time studying and getting to know the craft and understanding the fundamentals of writing to be an authority or credible figure when it comes to speaking on writing?
Well, it depends. If you take a screenwriting class, it's going to be a different situation than if you take if you're writing, if you take a writing class about making a book. Like, both mediums are very different. However, yeah, I mean, of course, you can talk about it in a somewhat educated manner, but it doesn't mean you necessarily are right about everything when it comes to writing. That's an unfair thing to say.
That's correct. Obviously, a screenplay and a novel are different mediums and should be treated differently. That doesn't remove the tools that writers can use, essentially as rules, to help structure their writing, which does cross mediums.
It can, but structures can vary, obviously.
So, would you agree that this is, case in point, an example of something that would cross mediums? Regardless if Momoshiki is written in a screenplay, or a manga, or an anime, or a light novel, or a video game, or a stage play, or whatever else you can think of, a puppet show, a sock puppet show at that.
Hey, I get it.
When it comes to Momoshiki's character, we can judge it the same way.
I think that's fair, but I don't think there's anything that would say that what is happening with him right now. Again, we don't know what's going to happen, but from what we know right now, is bad character writing, because that's all you can really assess it through. You can assess it through that metric, really, I think.
Yes. So I'm glad you say that. So I have a lot of sources here, as you see up top here. So let me just share the audio real quick. Let's see.
Good old Robert McKee.
Yep. Okay, I think this is the right one. Is that the right one? If I play this, does it play?
You can take any principle.
Did it play? Am I doing the wrong one?
Yes.
It did play?
Yes.
Okay. Then I'm just going to let this play from 219, because I really liked what he said here in regards to this topic.
So you can, in anti-structure, you can take any principle in classical design, turn
I might
it on
just
its
not
head.
hear it because of my phone, but
But
I don't hear it.
You can hear it though, LRJ?
I can hear yes.
Okay, weird. At the very least, there's captions on, so Kamui, you can follow along here if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'll just actually just.
Okay, I will rewind it again so you can just follow along with the captions. It's not a long thing anyways. Okay. It only goes like 30 seconds or whatever.
And so you can, in anti-structure, you can take any principle in classical design, turn it on its head, do it the opposite way. As I said yesterday, all questions that begin with could are answered by sure. So it's not a question of could we do it? Of course you could do it. The question is why? Why am I doing it? And what I said was,
okay, before going on, I just want to say that's basically that famous Jurassic Park quote. Oh, you scientists didn't stop to ask if you could or should. You asked if what is it?
I mean, he's basically just talking about how in stories, like, people do loads of different things and break rules all the time, and that's fine. That's
Well, he's talking about specifically anti-structure because there's multiple ways to basically do structure. There's minimalist style, there's the classical style he's talking about, and there's anti-structure, which is ignores structure, basically. But he explains in further detail about when you should versus shouldn't do that. And then we can determine whether or not that applies to the situation of Boruto's structure.
It is sincere. If you believe in this character, in this world, and you really want to use this anti-structure technique to express something that you passionately believe in, do it.
So right there, Robert McKee, he's saying you can do it. It's a good thing. If you want to do it, it can be good. But he's going to explain under a certain parameter.
Do it.
So we'll see if it falls under that or not.
I mean, you could argue that 8.5. It's a masterpiece of chaotic desires, right? Marcello just bouncing around, whatever. What I warn against is wanting to do the opposite, having a character like the Coen Brothers film that is without any desire, simply for the sake of difference.
Man, Kamui, you know what that reminds me of?
What?
Name starts with the letter M, and it rhymes with Momoshiki.
So I don't know why you're really saying that, because we can't read Ikimoto's mind for what he intends to do.
We
with
can
Momoshiki's
read
character.
his story, which is what he intends to do.
Yeah, but we haven't seen the rest of the story.
But
though.
we can judge it up until this certain moment in time instead of the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit hard, though, because we don't know what he's intending for the future, so it's kind of hard.
Which is why we could judge it on different merits, or just look at only up until this certain point.
Yeah, so you could say, that his character is that way just to be different, but I don't see any basis for that, really. There's no evidence for that. It fits perfectly within who we know Momoshiki to be, so I don't see this. I don't really get it.
Sure. Well, I think the most obvious guess that people have would be that Momoshiki's going to agree to the deal, and oh my god, Momoshiki's back, baby! We're going to get him better than ever before! He's going to be doing his devious stuff once he takes over Boruto's body, and it's going to be crazy, just like the Borushiki we know and love. And sure, if we go with that, fine. That's not our complaint. Once he's back, we're going to like him because he's being Momoshiki. Our complaint is that this chapter confirmed what Momoshiki has been in Two Blue Vortex, seemingly.
Okay, what do you mean?
Our problem isn't what he's going to do in 5-10 chapters from now based on this deal. It's the fact that this deal even needed to be made in the first place. We had our...
Get him to do something.
Yeah.
Why do you think a villain needs to be proactive in some way? Do you think that's
Yes.
He needs to be doing something? Do you think that's inherently important? Why is that inherently important?
Without conflict or an obstacle, there's no story.
Yeah, so the protagonist has no reason to change if his enemy, the antagonist or villain, isn't forcing him to do it. It's almost reverse in this case. Boruto is forcing Momoshiki to change.
Yeah, again, I don't see how that's a problem. You can do the same thing with a villain. I mean, you could say for Code, for example, it acts a lot like a protagonist in terms of his journey of overcoming struggle. That's, I guess you could say, a subversion of what you would do normally. And I'm sort of seeing shades of that in Momoshiki now, though I can't really tell where it's going.
So
I don't see any problem with that. I don't see why that's an issue. What you can't do it that way. Why? I don't get it.
Well, because the thing is, again, so getting away from hero and villain, let's look at protagonist and antagonist, because that's really what's kind of the important part here. So one of Boruto's main conflicts of interest is Momoshiki taking over. That's a big part of his character. It's influenced a lot of his decisions. Never mind the fact that he's inconsistent about it. It just does influence a lot of things with Boruto as well as Walky. Momoshiki's the antagonist, Boruto's the protagonist. If Momoshiki's not doing anything, then Boruto has no reason to be conflicted about Momoshiki. Which means all those times he was conflicted, it's like, what was the conflict? There is none.
Well, we're not really sure about the specifics, but if your theory, Kamui, is true, that the reason, like 2 years ago, wherever he felt like he was dying was because Momoshiki wanted to die so badly, that is a conflict.
Just an answer.
Yeah. That is a conflict. Like, Momoshiki is still a burden for Boruto, but Boruto also has other villains right now, so...
From that perspective, so the real issue there... This isn't necessarily the biggest narrative critique of all time. It's just lame. He's so depressed. He wants to kill himself, and that's the conflict.
Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, Kamui.
So
I do not share your feelings. I do not share your feelings. I think it is pretty interesting, actually, for a villain to be...
Well, but no, I don't think that is a conflict, though, because the problem is, yes, that Momoshiki's mind and body... Sorry, let me rephrase. Momoshiki and Boruto's minds are overlapping, but their bodies aren't.
Yeah.
Momoshiki wants to die. When Boruto last activated the karma, he didn't say he wanted to die. He said he felt like he was dying, which is different. So there's still no conflict there. If Momoshiki's unable to take over, there is no conflict.
I mean, we still don't know. I mean, if you say that then that kind of almost discredits the theory itself. He just felt like he was dying. I don't know if Momoshiki's desire to die would make him feel like he is dying or not. It's possible. It's the best we have to work with, but it could just be a bad recap or a new thing that we don't understand.
I think it's bad recap.
Exactly. I don't know what it is either.
I think it's bad recap too, but it's weird.
Yeah, but let me put this in the most simplest form. Let's say you want to sit in a chair and you're right next to the chair. You have a goal, but you don't have a conflict. There's no story. Now let's say you're across the room from the chair, on the other side of the country from the chair. Now you have a journey. That's a story, because traversing that journey is itself the conflict. That's the antagonist. It's human versus nature. Now, okay, you're in the same room as a chair, but there's someone in between you and the chair trying to stop you from sitting in the chair. Not because they want to sit in the chair, because that's not what the antagonist would be doing. The antagonist wants to stop you from sitting in the chair. Doesn't matter why. Maybe there's $1 million in the chair and he gets it if you don't sit in the chair. I don't know, whatever. It doesn't really matter. There's an antagonist. You have a story. That's the conflict. If Momoshiki isn't doing that, there's not a story.
Well, I don't think that's really fair, because there are other antagonists filling that role, like Jura, for example. So you can definitely have an antagonist who used to be a main antagonist, who is now pushed into a different role, such as an anti-hero or whatever.
That's why I worded it this way, though.
Using your analogy, just to play devil's advocate, using your analogy, Momoshiki would be preventing Boruto from sitting in the chair by just double KOing both of them, essentially.
Well, but also let me clarify, because I specified that sitting in the chair is the goal. In this analogy, Jura isn't the antagonist standing in between Boruto and the chair. Jura is sitting in the chair. Well, conceptually speaking, metaphorically speaking, sitting in the chair is killing Jura. That's the goal.
Yes, that is his goal. Well, that's one of his goals right now. Yeah.
So Jura's the chair, essentially. And sitting in it kills him. There you go. But,
okay, well, I mean, you could say that not following a narrative structure is inherently bad, but
that is not what I or Robert McKee said. In fact, Robert McKee has more to say on this. It's a legendary rant.
If you're just trying to call attention to your eccentricities, and that makes you an artist because you don't do it the way other people have done it, to me, that is no achievement.
No achievement. What you got to say about that one, LRJ? Freaking eccentric artist over here, Kishimoto.
Well, I mean, I agree with what Robert McKee is saying, but I don't think it has anything to do with Momoshiki's character right now. How the hell do you know? Like, as far as I'm aware, right now at least, what he's doing with Momoshiki is perfectly interesting and a direction to take his character, and like I don't see the problem with it, frankly. And I mean, you can assign, that the author is trying to do this or doing this on purpose or whatever, but you don't really know, and you don't know what direction he's taking his character, so you can't.
Not the direction he's taking his characters, the direction he has taken his characters in.
Okay.
That is a difference.
This could be pushing Momoshiki into a different role. Like he could be, like well, not really like Kurama, but like, he could be begrudgingly help Boruto for a while, and like they could exchange like deals with each other or something like that. That would be a different role for him. More so as a neutral / sort of vaguely like a neutral antagonistic figure, for example, or something like that. We just don't know yet, so
we will
it's a bit
get to that next, because I already have preemptively planned out a response to that using objective screenwriting principles. But first, that was the end of the Robert McKee clip, but I want to just play it to the end anyways, just because it's a legendary rant. I just want to listen to it. It doesn't add anything. It's just funny.
It's not only not sincere, it doesn't take any talent. Any child can break their toys. Anybody can do it upside down. It doesn't take any creativity to do this.
I love it.
The way in which it's conventionally done, you do it unconventionally. So every time you go to make a choice, you say, what would Harold Pinter do? I'll do it the opposite. And that to me is, but if it's in order to express something very beautiful and something deeply felt, and to do it beautifully, then of course why not?
Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, so any child can break their toys. What do you think about that?
So what Robert McKee is describing as an example would be like if someone wrote a story exactly like Naruto, but instead Naruto, like, I don't know, was a psychopath and he killed people instead. Like that's what he's sort of describing, like doing the opposite just because it's
anybody can do it upside down.
And I don't see that with Momoshiki at all. What's happening with Momoshiki is nothing like that. He's just furthering his sort of character in a different way. Like I don't don't know. It doesn't apply in my opinion.
So
to his character.
To clarify your analogy, it wouldn't be that Naruto's crazy or whatever. When you have a character with a goal that is generally centrist, like it's the main idea for like story writing. If you have no goal, they have no will that's doing not that. And this likewise, if you give them 30 different things and they're just running around randomly trying to accomplish their 30 different goals randomly, that's also the other end of the extreme to where that's not screenwriting anymore. That's just something else entirely.
Main characters don't have to have goals. They can be pushed along by the story in certain types of things. So I disagree with the idea they have to have goals.
Yeah, the main character doesn't, but there needs to be a protagonist who does.
Because
the protagonist needs to have a goal. Not necessarily. I mean, they generally do because that's an easy way of writing a story, but it's not always the case.
Well, if you want your story to have a theme or a controlling idea, then you do need that.
Main character, but Naruto is the protagonist. So the Code Arc, Boruto is still the main character, but Kawaki's the protagonist.
So what you're saying is essentially stories don't need to have meaning. But if you take meaning out of the story, I feel like that's fundamentally no longer a story. That's just something someone's telling you.
No. I agree that some characters in the story should ideally have goals. But I'm saying the main character doesn't necessarily have to have a goal. The point of his character could be that he is a product of his environment pushing him along or doing something. And I don't think that means that the story has no meaning. I think that's an inherent...
The main character doesn't need to be the protagonist, but the protagonist, how you most easily define them is you look at the end of the story and it's the person who does the climactic decision, which is their choice. It's what they decide to do based on the journey up until that point, which is usually decided by other characters hindering or helping the character to change them, whether it's a positive or a negative change in their character arc. That's how you determine the controlling idea, the meaning of the story, which you need conflict for. Their hidden nature and all that.
No, I do agree that stories need conflict generally to work. But, you can always take rules out
Well, but
and you still have a story. Like there's almost examples of almost.
Well, yeah, that's
like,
a minimalist story. That's completely fine. That still uses structure. But what you just said, you can't have conflict if there's no goal. What's the conflict?
That's not true. There's plenty of stories with conflict where the protagonist doesn't have a goal.
Can you name one?
And stuff like that. Geez, I'd have to think about it though.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Just need one.
But just think about it. It doesn't make sense to have conflict without a goal. Because without a goal, you can't have conflict.
Because, for example,
conflict would be inherently meaningless.
A slight rewrite of Attack on Titan. Eren has no goal originally. The Titans are attacking him. The conflict is he doesn't want to die. His goal is to not die. Yeah. There you go. There's no way around that.
Okay.
If they're fighting the conflict, they have a goal, clearly. Otherwise, they wouldn't fight.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. I mean, in that story, that's how that works.
Well, this applies to anything.
Well,
that was just an easy example of living or dying. But
it can even be before the inciting incident. It can be in the ordinary world. You still have a generic goal.
Well, like for example, when I think of stories that don't really follow the hero has a journey that he needs to follow, sort of structure, I think of like filmmakers like David Lynch or even sometimes Quentin Tarantino or like things like that, where the stuff that you're watching is more so metaphorical, is more so it's not really about the character's journey. So this idea that things need to inherently conform to this primarily Western idea of what structure should look like for a story.
Well, first of all, Western structure originates from Europe, the East, but that also doesn't mean that we aren't also taught structure from all across the world. I was taught Japanese structure, and not Kishen Tensho, Kamui, but I mean actual Japanese structure. Yeah. So that's also inherently not true either. It's not conforming to Western values, and Ikimoto doesn't have to do that. Kishimoto doesn't even have to do that. That doesn't mean the Naruto manga isn't inherently structured. Same with the Boruto manga.
No, obviously there are structures in place to some degree. But for example, I don't agree with the idea that every arc of the story necessarily has three acts, for example.
No, that's fine.
I don't think that's necessary.
That's telling its own story in between every arc.
But either way, getting back to the story we're actually talking about, Momoshiki right now, if he was the only villain, if there were no other villains, then you would primarily be right, because I would be waiting for another villain to come in to actually fulfill that role. However, he's not. There are other villains in the story, and I think that there's a reason for that. Not only is there the Shinju, but there's Code as well. And so,
okay, real quick, this is slightly disingenuous. Slightly disingenuous, but that's the problem. Code is not doing anything. Momoshiki is not doing anything. And Jura is, you guessed it, not doing anything. Mabushi is
for the longest time. For the longest
not doing anything.
Well, for the longest time, like for example, Kabuto wasn't doing anything until he was. We didn't know his plan
we knew what he was building towards.
Well, in a vague sense, but no, I think the Shinju do have overarching goals. They're just the point of their characters is that they're distracting themselves with noticing their humanity, and therefore their goals become more.
Say that for Mabushi.
Sure, that's But no, the Shinju definitely have goals that they want to attain. They're just they're essentially like a Madara, for example. He was super focused on his goal, and these characters, that's not the point of what they're doing there.
Well, I would also say noticing their humanity is not distracting them. It didn't distract Ryu. It didn't distract Matsuri, who was looking for Boruto alongside Ryu. Like, who's it distracted?
Yeah, well, they all have different personalities, right? You got to take that into account.
Well, they have the original person's personality, but yes, they do.
like Jura, for example, has been clearly established and known to sort of meander in his thoughts, and when he's distracted by something, he will focus on that thing solely. He's like kind of like a child in that way. He can't have two thoughts
Jura
at
has
once.
ADHD.
That's right. And I don't know, for me it's been very interesting because it seems to me like the heroes are a lot more urgently, like Kashin Koji, for example, much more urgently press on the situation than the villains are, which I think is an interesting dynamic to have. They're more like forces of nature. They're kind of like babies who can like be very destructive, or you can tame them, or various. I think
they're baby Hitlers.
I think that's an interesting dynamic. But if Momoshiki is to play, I'm not sure what he's going to do. Again, if he's to play the sort of neutral antagonist role, where Boruto sort of has to bargain with him every once in a while to gain power, but he has to give stuff in return. I think that's a very fine place for Momoshiki's character to be right now, because he's already been the main villain. You know, you want him to do something different that's still interesting. So if that's what happens, then I don't think that's an issue at all.
So I don't think being bad is being interesting, or being different is being interesting, but we'll get to that as well. So here is another sort of breakdown here. I'm assuming you can see this on my screen. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Okay. And you should be able to hear it as well. And Kamui, I don't know why, but you probably won't. But so here's what Eric Edson had to say about this topic of anti-structure as well.
It's Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Know your enemy. Know this stuff. And then if you want to go off and write independent cinema and all that, great, God. With all of our blessings, yes, we need filmmakers and writers like that too. But know what it is you are not doing. It's important to know what you are leaving out. Do it intentionally and not just, by mistake. Okay, first, let's construct a specific.
Okay, so thoughts on that? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, you shouldn't write a story haphazardly without knowing what you're doing. I think that's fair.
I'm
However,
glad we agree.
It's true that, for example, writers like Akira Toriyama were writing stories where they had no idea where they were going, and those stories can be great as well.
There's nothing wrong with that, but it does invite writer's block. What I would say about that is it didn't really matter for Akira Toriyama because he was writing a gag manga at first. He just decided to change it to something else later on.
It became like an action, action comedy focused on, like, there was lots of drama as well. It was all kinds of different things, but
Hunter x Hunter has done it as well. I mean, he literally planned chapter 3 and that was it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter how much you plan. It's if it really matters just if the story itself works and is consistent at the end of the day. And also, he's talking about screenwriting specifically, and writing manga is not writing a screenplay. A screenplay is a very set, time, like usually an hour and 30 minutes. It can be a bit longer, a bit shorter. Whereas a manga story is much longer, much more involved.
Whereas,
so,
yes,
I don't know. I mean,
it's not about screenplay structure, it's about story structure, more specifically the anatomy of a story, which, like I was saying earlier, that crosses mediums.
I mean, sure, okay.
Yeah. So getting into the comment here, to go in order, since these are all individual specific things. So a lot of different search results, a lot of different ways to say the same thing, just because I know how to prompt specifically, so suck at people who hate AI. So in screenwriting, what are the unlikable traits? So I want to specify, before anything else, there's a misconception that people who aren't writers have about what makes a good character, and people think that when you write a character, their very first thought is, I gotta make them likable. And whereas, yes, there is room for that in stories, obviously, based on Eric Edson's 9 character sympathy traits. Kamui, you recognize this one.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's merit for this in a story because you want to be able to root for your main character, your hero. You want them to be a good guy because you want to be able to relate to them and you want to see them achieve their goal because they're hardworking and all these other traits here. It just makes sense. That is not an interesting or compelling character on its own. what makes a character interesting or compelling is seeing a situation that we've never seen before and how characters are going to react to it. For example, at the beginning of Iron Man 1, sorry, Kamui, if this is a recap for you, but at the beginning of Iron Man 1, the main character there, Tony Stark, he is not a likable character. He's a mean guy. And a lot of things he does. He's very weak. He's very intelligent, though. I'll give him that. But he's a rich billionaire philanthropist. And we as people don't see that in our day-to-day lives, which is why that promise of a premise, it buys us in. It holds our attention and it invests us as an audience member psychologically doing that. So you want to write interesting and compelling characters before anything else. And then you decide from there who you want to apply sympathy to on a psychological level so that we know who to root for, and then likewise at the other end of the coin, who to root against, because along with character sympathy, which again has merit, doesn't apply to necessarily the main characters. You can apply sympathy to villains, you can apply it to shadow characters or foils or supporting characters on either side. Either way, you can apply it to anyone. Likewise with villains, and I don't have the chart here, but don't ever write a likable character. Write a character that has wants and needs and loves and hates, but has been hurt and knocked down and has dreams. Be honest and authentic on the page. You want to write compelling characters. Yes, exactly what I just talked about. Never think about a character being likable.
People are always desperate for their stories to be liked, and so they want characters that people will like. But of course, people will generally like your story if it's interesting more than I relate to that guy. Of course, there's exceptions, but you know.
So, okay, I'm glad that you understand that. So, on the same end of the coin, unlikable traits are not something that need to be applied to the villain. They can even be applied to the good guys. Kamui, you love this example. Tokyo Revenger Season 2. Hawkeye. He's a coward. That is an unlikable trait, and that is his character arc. He has a positive change arc where he goes from an unlikable coward to a likable, brave guy. So being a coward is an example of a trait that makes a character unlikable. But that doesn't mean that it's a good or bad thing in terms of the writing. Usually it's a good thing because that's why it's intentionally being written that way. But thoughts on that?
No, that's completely true, obviously. I mean, you got like Aaron from AOT, for example, who's clearly still the main character at the end, but he's, extremely evil. And so, yes, as to me, as long as your characters are interesting and whatnot, it doesn't really matter how likable they are or whatnot, or if they happen to fall into a box of being a villain or an antagonist or whatever. As long as their characters are well written and interesting and compelling, and I can latch onto them. That's just my opinion.
I'm glad you say villain or antagonist or whatever, because did you know there's actually specific categories for this? So there's 14 different types of character archetypes. Are you aware of this?
Oodie, do you know that I've taken a screenwriting class before? I know this stuff. I know all this stuff already. I assume you're just trying to teach the audience, but that's good.
I thought that was a pretty good segue there.
But I do know, I have heard this stuff before.
Okay, so of these 14 character archetypes, let's see which one we think Momoshiki would be. Well, I think it's pretty clear to say, as of right now, Momoshiki is not being portrayed as a hero. Adversary, probably. Mentor, probably not. Love interest, I really doubt it. Sidekick, I'll put that in the probably category. Helper, follower, same with probably, I guess. Guardian, endangered innocent, comparison ally, comic ally, hopeful savior, cheerleader ally, adversary agent, and independent troublemaker. So of these, which one do you think applies to Momoshiki?
Well, first of all, we don't know because we haven't seen the rest. I feel like I'm tired of repeating that, but it's true. And also, I'm pretty sure, is it possible for a character to not be one of those things? I'm pretty sure it is. But
not according to Eric Edson, who has his master's in screenwriting.
Okay, well, even if it is, We can't say yet because we don't know what his role is going to be.
That's fine, because we know what his role has been up until this point, which is, again, what we are comparing.
So far he's been a very, like, narratively, like, a very straightforward antagonist, narrative foil for the main character.
Yes. Okay. So, I'm sure you also understand that that's what we're critiquing Momoshiki on. Not for potentially changing character archetypes, but for being bad at his, assuming it changed, previous character archetype.
Well, I think that's a little unfair because characters can change drastically into different things in a story. So, you know.
Okay. Well, getting back to the comment here.
Oh, this character isn't, you know, you can talk all, you know, like about how Eren is like a bad protagonist or whatever because he's not a protagonist anymore for all these different reasons. But
well, just to clarify, what
Oodie's
trying to say there is that you agree he's been a villain and antagonist up until
so far,
the
yes.
current moment.
But my point is that it doesn't mean he has to stay that way forever.
As of right now,
but he's not saying that. What Oodie's saying is, up until the current moment, he's been a villain, and he's critiquing that.
All right. Well, all I can say is I don't think that's fair because he could easily be changing.
Well, you're right. He could be changing starting now.
Yes.
But Oodie is going up until now. So the change hasn't. He's not critiquing the change because he's critiquing where he didn't change.
Well, that's the problem with talking about an ongoing story because you don't know exactly. You're not sure about what's going to happen, so you can't meaningfully critique something. in some cases, yeah, you can say, hey, he's not what he used to be, and that's bad. But like you don't know what's going to come next. You might be absolutely right. Like, oh man, he's a terrible villain because he doesn't fulfill what a villain should be. But there could be something else going on there.
Well, it's not that I might be right. It's based on the rules of screenwriting as outlined by the person who owns a master's degree that I am objectively correct.
So that's all you're trying to argue, that you're objectively correct. I think that's an inherently wrong way to look at like story in general, because stories are based on sort of how you feel about something. They're a very emotional experience, and things are very subjective. Someone can have a completely different emotional reaction to something else, and therefore something being, you know, you could say something's bad according to these rules that I came up with. But there's going to be loads of people that still find it meaningful, still find it emotionally resonating, and inherently, I don't think that blanket statement of it's bad because I said so is fair. Essentially, I don't think it's reasonable.
Okay, so the problem with that is that what can change in the future? The direction can start pivoting now, but any information that's revealed in the future is going to apply to that new direction. But the only context that I could possibly see changing our minds is if Momoshiki is revealed that he actually has had a plan all along, in which case they're just not going in that new direction.
No, I don't think that would help, because otherwise, it's kind of redundant, isn't it? Like, he wanted to take over Boruto's body before and tried and failed. Now what? Well, he wants to keep doing that. That's just repetitive. He's not evolving his situation. But in the prophecy arc, Boruto, you know, essentially defeated him. And now we're seeing what a defeated Momoshiki looks like and what he will be desperate enough to do or not do, or what he's going to agree with, etc., etc. So, like,
out of curiosity,
yeah,
this is just a theory-based question, but in terms of your theories, when Boruto is going to quote unquote lose control in chapter 9 as well as in chapter 24.
I'll be right back.
What do you think Momoshiki was going to do? Do you actually think he was just going to slit Boruto's throat and kill himself? Or was he going to do something else? Like, what do you honestly believe, if you had to guess?
It's hard to say, because it's hard to say how 10 Directions is a bit all over the place in terms of what Koji can see or can't see. But in essence, Koji is probably just saying it's a bad idea to give the opportunity for Momoshiki to take control of your body, because he might do bad things with it. He could take control and kill himself, or he could do something else. He could I'm going to kill his friends because that's fun. Or he could
exactly.
kill Himawari.
It's clearly implied he was going to do something. My question is,
don't know.
Again, pick your favorite. What do you think he was going to do?
I think, knowing what I know about Momoshiki, if he was in the position to have something that would amuse him, because right now he's tremendously bored, right? He's essentially just sitting around doing nothing. If he had the opportunity to kill Boruto's friends or show off some power or something like that, I think he would definitely would do it, because he's an arrogant guy. So that's what I would think he would do.
Now I have another question. With that in mind, assuming that's correct, do you think Momoshiki was A, just lying about being depressed and wanting to die, or beyond death, just not exist, or B, he thinks that now in chapter 25, but in chapter 24 he didn't think that way yet? Do you think it's A or B?
I think he's essentially whining to Boruto, oh, my situation's so difficult. That's essentially what he's doing. And
that sounds like it's not genuine then. He doesn't actually feel that way. He's just overplaying it.
No. I think in a way, I think he is saying the truth, but he's also clearly, he certainly might be overplaying it, but it's hard to really know. All I know is that the only reason he would vent to Boruto like this is because he's essentially complaining, which is completely ridiculous. I mean, he's essentially like a child mentally in a lot of ways, because he did want to do this exact same thing to Boruto. Now when it happens to him, he's like, oh no, I wanted to do it. And so that's who he is.
Yeah, but like you're saying, though, when a character is pushed like Momoshiki was in Chapter 80, we see what Momoshiki acts like. He's desperate. He wants Boruto's body. He wants to take it over right now. Oh my god, this is awful. We saw the same thing with Ishiki after Baryon mode. He started realizing he was about to die. We see these Otsutsuki's change in their characterization. We did see that with Momoshiki. What we're seeing now should reflect what we saw 3 years ago. His new normal, his ordinary world. But it's not doing that. He's being different from how he was the last time we saw him in Chapter 80.
Well, I mean, he's different in a sense. Before, he was, very upset that his plan failed. So now that time has passed, he is just depressed about the fact that his plan has failed. It's
but
just
that
time
applies
has passed
to Chapter 80. No, it's not because time has passed, because what does he do? He stops focusing on the prophecy. He tries to make Boruto despair through any means necessary. Ignore that Sasuke guy, Boruto. Despair! Oh, you gotta despair, bro. Not because of omnipotence, but because I said so. Just do it, man. He's not doing that. He's not trying at all.
Well, he was an angry boy. No, but he was... Well, the reason he was doing that was out of desperation, right? He realized that the prophecy didn't work, and he was essentially yelling at Boruto to despair, which of course didn't work, and obviously he saw that.
But exactly my point. He was desperate, which means he didn't immediately give up. That's Momoshiki's true character. That's his hidden nature.
No, he gives up easily. I would say that Momoshiki is the type of character who is essentially he is always been sort of someone who doesn't work hard, someone who, because that was in the first arc of the story, right? That was his thing, is he didn't want to train. He's like a higher up Otsutsuki who doesn't want to do any work.
So let's address that really quick, because that's what you say in your second paragraph. Remember, Momoshiki is intelligent with information. After all, he knows all about Jutsu. Yeah. But when regarding any emotional intelligence or real patience or maturity, he's basically a pampered child who whines when he doesn't get what he wants and hates to work hard. I think that's close, but it's far at the same time of Momoshiki's true character. Yes, he was supposed to parallel Boruto in the first arc, but as any good antagonist, protagonist, or shadow character should work as a foil, it's accentuating one specific character type, not all character types. Obviously, he can't parallel Boruto in every single way. Boruto wins at the end of part 1. Yeah, Momoshiki can't parallel that. He lost. So that he doesn't parallel in every way. He parallels in some ways. In some ways, he's just different from Boruto. And I don't think it's fair to say that he just gives up and doesn't want to work hard. He does want to work, or he, at the very least, regardless of if he wants to work hard, he does work hard. He's also very patient. Okay, yeah, he complained about Naruto taking too long, and then he kept sapping juice out of Naruto anyways. It took him a couple hours, it was going to take him a couple more hours. He didn't stop doing it, he just stopped for a moment to complain about it, and then he kept doing it. Just like Boruto, who did what? He mastered the Rasengan despite complaining about it the whole time. Momoshiki's like, oh, just you wait, Boruto, I'm really excited and giddy for this prophecy that I see happening in like a year from now. If he can't even complain for like 2 seconds about Naruto taking a couple hours, how is he going to possibly wait a couple years for the prophecy? Unless it's not actually like that, and he can be patient and he can wait as long as he knows he's going to get his way, he's going to get what he wants, and he can be confident in that.
Yeah, I'll respond to that in just a second. I have to do something. I'll be right back.
I thought you said you were about to sneeze.
I'll be right back. Hold on.
But Kamui, would you like to respond to that? Would you agree more so with me or with L or J? Or
well, real quick, I won't do it right this second because that would be terrible. But right before he said that, I was about to say I really should be leaving.
Okay, I was about to say that you really got to sneeze too.
I did sneeze earlier today. No, since we're talking about sneezing, I'll just say this a random fact. So
I thought you were about to say you're gonna just sneeze. Please God.
No, but it has to do with sneezing. So I had an eye appointment today. Like I was at work and I just had my own eye appointment at the end of the day, and so I got dilated. And it was really weird because like I don't remember this ever being a thing, but for some reason the brightness made me want to sneeze. So I was wearing sunglasses on my drive home.
Oh no, that is a thing.
Like,
yeah, it's the brain thing. Yeah, no, it's the wires are like crossed or whatever for those two like sensations. Yeah, it's not just you. It's whenever a lot of people. It's not everyone, but whenever a lot of people see a bright light, it does give them the sensation and need to sneeze.
Okay, because I was like, every time I looked at the corner of my eyes, they made me want to sneeze for a while, and then at one point I burst out laughing. I turned my head to the left to like look for cars, and I just got instant sunlight, and I just immediately sneezed. It just did happen. It's like, what? I don't remember this being a thing.
Oh my God.
It was kind of funny. But,
oh, so good.
Anyway, I agree about Momoshiki being patient. I mean, my hang-up personally is that
okay,
I have a bit of a hang-up regardless, but it does boil down to, is Momoshiki being genuine or not? Because if he's lying, I'm asking, why can't he take over in chapter 13 when Vortex is knocked out?
Yeah.
Why not? If he's telling the truth, it's just, I don't know if I really like it. Just gave up.
Okay, Oodie, sorry. Can you repeat at least a little bit of what you said before I left?
Yeah, I'll get Kamui's opinion on this as well, really quick. Unless you wanted to leave. But I was going to say, in terms of Momoshiki being a rich snob, I disagree. If you look at Tento was a rich snob. Yes, even Tento could learn, but I would say that Momoshiki, by the end of the first arc, he did learn about ninjas, considering what Momoshiki is for the rest of part 1. He does have ninja tactics. He's not like Ishiguro, where he only disavows the ninja way or whatever. So yeah, even Momoshiki can learn.
Momoshiki would never admit. So that's actually an example of a contradiction in character in a way that works.
It's an intentional one, yeah. It's a good one.
But it's just proved the opposite.
It gives him dimension.
Ninjas are inferior creatures. What does Momoshiki do, though? He exclusively has used ninjutsu and ninja tactics. He's not used any of his own abilities ever since he left.
Yeah, I mean, he was forced to do that because he was trapped in Boruto's body, but he doesn't embody any other sort of narratively like important ninja qualities, like and whatnot, like being able to endure.
He does some good
could ask strategies, but also he's not forced to do it. Like, Kawaki can use Ishiki's powers. There's no reason why Momoshiki can't use Momoshiki's powers.
Yeah, I mean, he's like playful and he wants to play with these techniques. You know, he makes the Rasengan probably just because it's fun. You know, because
Yeah, that's a ninja thing to do.
he likes seeing
Yeah.
people suffer. You know, and so he wants to. So he wants to.
Well, but to be fair, I feel
do
like
it
you
in
wording it
various
that
different
way.
ways.
You wording it that way isn't necessarily fair because sure, he's essentially a rich snob, but he's supposed to parallel Boruto. Oh, Boruto's a brat. That's what everyone says. Boruto's more than just a brat in the first arc. Sure, maybe he comes across as a brat to a lot of people on the surface. Again, he doesn't have a lot of those 9 sympathetic traits by Eric Edson. You know, the guy who's certified to be a professor to teach screenwriting in college classes. So I think I'm going to listen to him more than I'm going to listen to you. But I would say that Momoshiki is supposed to parallel Boruto to where there's more to his character, and we do see that in part 1. He's more than just a rich snob. He's like Boruto. Boruto's going to complain about the Rasengan, but he's going to learn the Rasengan. Boruto didn't want to cheat. He cheated as a last resort every single time. And sure, you can say he hesitated because he knew he could cheat, but either way, if he was truly just a rich snob, just a brat, he would have just cheated without having a conscience. He would have just been a criminal, a crook, and he wouldn't have cared.
So I think that's missing the fact that Momoshiki is not a pure parallel to Boruto. He is a, a cautionary tale to Boruto, but what he could become
Exactly.
if he continued down his path, which basically means that, you know, I mean, it's a bit of an exaggeration. Like
in one regard,
he would never become literally Momoshiki, because Momoshiki's like too evil. But that's sort of the idea, right?
Yeah, exactly. I agree. It's what Boruto will become if he continues down this path. But again, not in every regard. Again, Momoshiki learns the Rasengan. So, it was Boruto going to learn the Rasengan if he continues down this path? Some parts of him, seemingly so, if that's the case. Some parts of him, no. Some parts of him, yes. So, you got to look at what things are being paralleled.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Momoshiki was, as Borushiki, he wasn't learning anything. He was just using abilities that Boruto already possessed. So he hasn't done anything.
Not what a Boruto. He did learn stuff great.
Well, it was a pretty quick learning because he came up with it immediately.
He's a ninja prodigy.
The point is that Momoshiki can't do hard work, and therefore isn't patient. Therefore can't, therefore I would argue, gives up easily. And I think that's a very consistent idea of what he's been so far.
I mean, I'd say he worked pretty hard in that Chapter 66 fight against Milwaukee.
Exactly.
Well, sure, he fights hard when he's, like, in a fight for life or death. I mean, he did it with Naruto and Sasuke.
No, that wasn't a fight for life or death. He chose to take over because he had a goal. He wanted to get the chakra fruit. He wanted to take Kawaki. That's hard work. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, his goal is a purely selfish one. It's one that revolves around him, and so it's a goal that is a fairly weak one that he can essentially...
Well, okay, hold on. So, Naruto worked hard to learn the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Would you agree?
Boruto worked hard. Yeah, he worked kind of hard. Yeah.
Naruto in Chapter 1 of Naruto.
Oh, Naruto.
Yeah, he worked.
Yes,
hard.
Naruto.
Well,
Naruto
that was
definitely.
A selfish goal. He just wanted to pass the exam.
That's not a bad thing. I would also add, technically, you could just be wrong. His original goal was to harvest the chakra fruit to bring it back to the Otsutsuki clan, and not to devour it himself. So.
Okay, well, either way, that's a retcon.
Selfless, though.
Exactly.
I mean, look, obviously a character who's lazy isn't going to be incapable of doing work if they're in desperate need of it. But right now, Momoshiki's in a situation...
Well, Momoshiki's not in desperate need of it, though. He's extremely powerful.
Yeah, but as far as we know, Momoshiki's in a situation right now where there's literally nothing for him to do materially. Because every time before he had a goal, first it was, I'm going to, it'll be either the prophecy or it'll be me taking over his body with karma. Then karma failed. Then he was like, okay, now I'm going to wait for the prophecy to happen. And now he has nothing. And therefore, he has no way out, essentially.
But that's not true, though, because he has his power, just like Ishiki, who had nothing. As soon as Baryon Mode Naruto came out, Kawaki's not in front of him. So what's he gonna do? He's gonna resort back to the thing he actually has, his power. And he's just gonna dominate everyone with his power until he gets his way. Kawaki.
Yeah, I mean, Ishiki and Momoshiki are different characters, but I would essentially say that.
But they share the similarity.
Yeah, Momoshiki's depressed phase right now. It could be various different things, but it could be like him exaggerating. It could be him, he could actually be depressed. It's hard to really tell what he's doing or thinking. But as far as I can tell right now, he's essentially given up because he sees no way out for him to take over Boruto's body permanently, and therefore he is essentially despaired because
so real
is unattainable.
I need to go after this, so I'll make this my last point. But that's already a problem. This Momoshiki's belief that he just can't take over when he's proven that he can in the prophecy. He can just take over, whether Boruto likes it or not.
That's a problem with the sort of the way the mechanics are presented, not the way Momoshiki's character is written.
Well, no, it's both, because Momoshiki would just know that he can.
Yeah.
I would say that
There's
the rules.
no reason for him to think he can. That's just beyond.
Because these two are intertwined. If the mechanics are written this way, you can say the mechanics are badly written, but keeping in mind that they are written this way, the only explanation is that Momoshiki knows he can take over. He's just so depressed that he's not motivated to actually do so.
Yeah. Well, I would say that's true, because what is he going to do when he takes over? Like, he can't
make Boruto despair
permanently. Well, I mean, he could.
If he's strong enough to contend with Jura, I think he can handle killing Himawari Mitsuki.
Yeah.
He hasn't lost everything yet.
It's very possible that what Ikimoto's intending is that Momoshiki can't take over unless Boruto uses the karma. Like, that could be a new rule that's implemented.
But that's the problem. Karma was activated on 2 occasions.
Also,
Boruto
hasn't been implemented yet.
Boruto was like trying to suppress its power and stuff like that. So there's, again, we're not quite sure how it works. It's hard to say.
He was also passed out.
But I would, but I think it might work differently now. As I'm not sure. Again, we don't know. I don't know. I haven't read the rest of the story.
Well, I know. It's not. Have you read the rest of the story? It's what in the story makes you think that.
Makes me think that it's just the karma, because the only time where he's afraid that Momoshiki's going to take over is when he activates his karma. There's no other time where he's like, if I sleep, maybe he'll come over.
Well, you know what? Same with the prophecy arc.
What do you mean?
Boruto thought the same thing in the prophecy arc.
He thought that, he, like, you mean that Momoshiki couldn't take over because he could control his power better? Is that what you mean?
And he was proven wrong.
Yeah, well, it still remains to be seen about that one scene where he takes over, where Momoshiki, quote unquote, takes over, but like he's using like the true essence of karma form. Back then, like, I thought, like, when I first read that chapter, I thought, okay, well, that's just Boruto in true essence, like, and Kawaki thinks it's Momoshiki, right? That's what I assumed. But nothing's been confirmed yet after that, so it's hard to say. Is that Momoshiki? Probably, maybe, but why is he in the true essence of karma form? So it's really hard to say. Right now, yes, the story presents it as that was Momoshiki, so you could definitely make that argument. Boruto was wrong before, but to be fair, now he does have Kashin Koji, and he is more mature, and he has grown. And so he would know more about his situation with Momoshiki than he did before. But either way, that's
in 3 years. But okay, before Kamui goes, because I know he really wants to, I'll say this as a blanket statement: our problems with Momoshiki don't stem from this chapter. Our problems with Momoshiki are continuing as they have been from when did it start, Kamui? Chapter 79 or 80?
Yes, I know you don't like those chapters.
It kind of depends on your perspective on it, but yeah, generally prophecy arc.
Yeah, because this is about him like as an overarching villain rather than what he does in the code arc that you don't like about that. Regardless of reviving Boruto using his 18% that he didn't do, but he did do. Regardless of that, our problems with Momoshiki, that's our problem with Momoshiki. It stems from there. It's continuing from there to here. And so we don't have to repeat ourselves. Kamui has an hour-and-a-half long video. I know for those who are new here, like L and J, who have never heard us talk about it before, we don't like the Omnip song. You can go find out why there.
Yeah, I've watched Kamui's video. It came out a while ago, and you know, he has a lot of points that, at least from my memory, that were either stuff that was going to be addressed anyway, or stuff that
so with that, I ended up cutting those out because a lot of people were about that. But the point is, they should have been addressed before the time skip.
Yeah, it is a problem that they're not addressed for it.
I don't necessarily matters, but
it does matter because it's a different manga, but that's outside of the universe.
Oh, I'm not getting with you on that right now. That's complete
sure
nonsense. Anyway, Anyway, I would just say that I think in general you can argue with specifics and details, but I would say that Momoshiki's character from Prophecy Arc and right now, so when Ikimoto's been writing him essentially, has been fairly strong, fairly competent. It's been essentially, you know, it's been a very unified sort of, you know, a characterization for him.
Well, Momoshiki's definitely been consistent and unified. I'll give you that.
I think so. I think he has. So I think that's important. And I especially been consistent from the very beginning since he showed up. I think his character has always been very... they've just added to what's already been there, essentially, for him.
Yeah. Again, we liked Momoshiki from the beginning through the Prophecy Arc and just until the end of the arc.
Well, I know you didn't like him then, mainly because... his defeat felt disappointing to you guys, but I would argue that his defeat made sense. But anyway,
it's definitely unearned. But
anyway,
Kamui won.
I'm sorry. I need it.
All right. See you later, Kamui.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, to keep going with this comment here, and actually just to go back to the beginning on this, so you guys going on about how bad it is for Momoshiki and Miss Bear and stuff, but really why is that a bad thing? So have we elaborated on that enough yet, or?
Yeah.
Okay, because I wanted to go into this, saying it again, since we've already said it a lot of times in the past, but in a not meme way, since you didn't like us doing it that way last time, clearly. So, new arguments in addition to everything else that we've said. So hopefully I've done that for the most part for a lot of this. I would not say, if you wanted to, you can keep outlining why it's consistent with this character. I do not think it's consistent with the character, because, I mean, if you're referencing the comment you made last time rather than the things you said tonight, since obviously you made this comment 2 days ago, then Momoshiki losing to a Rasengan from a child, that's not writing wise being consistent with his character. That's
no, I mean, like, he's always been, you know, this idea that Momoshiki was some kind of, you know, emotional psychological mastermind who was like, you know, like isn't really true. Like, yes, he's intelligent, but he's always been a bit of a goofy character in a way. He's always been kind of like comedically wrong, like, and he's always been, you know, defeated by the same thing, which is a lack of understanding of empathy and how people form bonds and stuff like that since the very beginning.
He can have goofy things happen to him. For example, the vanishing Rasengan in the anime, it makes his cheek look all fluffy and silly and big and comically large. Exactly. But Momoshiki's a serious character. He was introduced as a serious character, not only through the Kaguya foreshadowing, but also his literal introduction when he seemingly kills Naruto. Likewise, at the very end of the story, his defeat, that's also a very serious moment. The father-child Rasengan, the impact, the weight of the Rasengan itself, the emotions and memories stored within that and the audience, the fact he uses that to destroy Momoshiki, that's not Boruto, that's Naruto doing it. Boruto's just the one behind the Rasengan. Let's also not forget that Sasuke... Sasuke's the only reason he even had that opening in the first place. But ignoring that, then you also
Well,
have the
it is
fact that he
both.
gave him karma in that cool mind space. Everything he said
It
there
is
was
both.
absolutely serious.
It is both, because you can't have a Rasengan just float towards Momoshiki. You have to have someone actually throw it to him. That is a meaningful, action. So I would say that yes, Naruto contributed to the size of the Rasengan, but the action of killing Momoshiki, while Sasuke aided, of course, could definitely be attributed to Boruto. But that doesn't really matter. My point was mainly just that he's, been consistent from the beginning in terms of his how essentially serious or unserious he's been.
I mean, I completely don't think that fair. If we're gonna say that Boruto killed Momoshiki and that means anything at all, then I think we've lost the plot.
If you say so, seems like he killed him to me.
I feel like that's a lot of a Western ideology that a lot of Western fans say, that, oh, he lost to a child, he's such a loser, just ignoring all context. Come on.
Well, obviously, narratively, it makes sense for him to lose there, but it's also kind of embarrassing for him because he's, a 1,000-year-old deity who's been just defeated by like a 12-year-old and a couple guys who were like, I don't know, 30-something. Like, it's the point is that Momoshiki's defeat is a super big failure that is an embarrassing thing.
I completely disagree. I do think that is just the Western mindset, because then that would apply even more to Kaguya, who is as old and lost to younger people.
Yeah, Kaguya also lost. I don't know what your point is. Yes, she did lose.
Is that just as embarrassing, if not more, for Kaguya?
I don't know. I mean, probably.
To be fair, though, Kaguya...
No.
Because it doesn't matter how old the person is, it matters how much power they have. And this is shonen, where age doesn't matter. That's the very first thing we learn about the series from Kakashi and the Land of Waves.
Okay, so you would say that Momoshiki's defeat, was not, like, in any way embarrassing for him. It was like, oh, that's definitely, like, fair enough. He got defeated. Is that how you would see it? Like...
No, I don't think it's a bad thing. Momoshiki lost to someone who's stronger than him. He didn't lose to some random 30-year-old. He lost to Naruto and Sasuke. Naruto and Sasuke aren't strong because they're 30-year-old men. Like a 30-year-old man would be strong in real life compared to a 12-year-old. It's not why Momoshiki lost.
I know why he lost, but my point was just that he... I think you're sort of losing the fact that Boruto's in this equation. Naruto gives him the Rasengan, but Naruto isn't the one that throws the Rasengan at his face.
Okay, well, first of all, Boruto's not throwing the Rasengan. Boruto's holding it in his hand.
Yeah, and he, throws it towards throws his hand towards Momoshiki. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyway.
It's so clear what the story's going for, though. Yes, Naruto is giving Boruto the experience. He confirms it himself in the light novel. First of all, Momoshiki's already been defeated twice. Naruto and Sasuke just straight up did defeat him the first time. Then Katasuke came in. Then they've worn him down to the point that he's exhausted. He cannot go on practically anymore. Momoshiki's been defeated again by Naruto and Sasuke. He's already done. They're just giving Boruto the win.
Yeah, I mean, sure, but he was killed. I think, he was killed by Boruto. So.
He wasn't killed by Boruto, he was killed by Naruto's Rasengan.
He was killed by Naruto's Rasengan, which was being used by Boruto. I mean, you can't say, like, you can't shoot someone with a gun and say, I didn't kill someone with this gun, someone else made this gun. That doesn't work. It doesn't work that way.
It was Naruto's Rasengan, not being used by Boruto, but given to him by Naruto. Boruto didn't do anything.
It doesn't matter.
I could have killed Momoshiki there just as easily as Boruto. Naruto could have killed him just as easily as Boruto. Shibai could have killed him just as easily as Boruto. Because it's not the character, it's the thing. It's the Rasengan.
Okay, well, my point was just that he was killed by Boruto. That is a simple fact.
It's not a fact. Boruto did not kill Momoshiki.
Okay, I guess we can just agree to disagree on that.
Okay. That's also not embarrassing. Never. It could be a potentially interesting direction for his and Boruto's dynamic going forward. So why exactly do you say it? Because I'm sure you would agree it being different alone is not something that makes it interesting or compelling.
No. No, of course not, but I think it is compelling.
Why?
Or could, is potentially compelling. Well, because I mean, like I've outlined, I think his it could be an interesting thing for someone like Momoshiki to face, to be able to, to be in a position where he has to work with someone else, which he's never really, I guess in a desperate manner, I guess, because when he was with Kinshiki, they always did things separately and stuff like that. And it could also, I always love to see villains, powerful villains in desperate positions because they do interesting things. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's an inherently interesting direction. Doesn't mean it will be interesting. Doesn't mean it will be perfectly executed in the future. But as of now, I'm like, hey, that's a cool thing to do with him. Well, and that's all I can say.
I definitely wouldn't say that Momoshiki's desperate right now.
Don't think he's desperate?
No.
Okay. You say
he's so unmotivated to die that he's not even killing himself. When he wants
I mean, you could say people who are depressed are desperate, but, either way.
Well, it's like the example with the chair, going back to if Momoshiki's the main character. The chair's there. Nobody and nothing is in his way. All he has to do is sit down. He's just too lazy to even do it. There's no conflict. There's no story. He's just not even doing his goal. He just doesn't care.
I think saying there's no story here is disingenuous, because I think there definitely is a story here to be told with Boruto and Momoshiki's dynamic, which I've already talked about.
Well,
what they could do. So
to put this analogy in more context, then Boruto's in the room. Boruto's begging Momoshiki, please, Momoshiki, just squat down. The chair's right there. You want to do it anyways. Please sit down in the chair. And then Momoshiki just hasn't done it yet.
Well, the conflict inherently comes from the fact that both of them are tied to Boruto's body, right? What happens with Boruto will affect both of them. So,
well, that isn't conflict. That's just
it could totally be conflict if for example, if they have to make a deal and like Momoshiki like backstabs him, or Boruto has a plan to like overcome him in some way, in terms of what plan he has or whatever he's going to do.
Yeah, it can lead to conflict, and I agree, it can lead to something good. Like I said, in the future, we're going to be ecstatic when Momoshiki's back doing his evil villain thing like we expect him to do. And if he does something new and interesting, then that's good as well. But that's not what we're saying.
Right now. No, right now you can't say this is bad, because you don't know if it's going to be written well or not, this dynamic. You can say in the future, hey, man, they could have really done this thing better. It was crap. But that's an execution, not the idea itself. I think saying ideas themselves are bad I just disagree with that idea in storytelling. I think you have to see how they're presented, how they're done. And I would argue, and I've already argued, the way it's presented from Momoshiki's character here is well done.
No, I don't think that's fair. Well, first of all, you can't argue that because you don't know how the story's going to go, so you can't argue well done. Well, you can't argue so far then, because then why can't I argue so far it hasn't been handled well?
Well, you can say you don't like it, but you can't say it hasn't been handled well, because I don't see the argument for it. I mean,
you can say you like it, but why can you say it's well done?
I've already explained why I think it's well done.
Okay. So I don't think it matters. Let's just say, giving Ikimoto the benefit of the doubt, a best case scenario, the future of Momoshiki is good. That doesn't retcon this into being good.
No, but it will always be an interesting setup that was poorly executed upon later.
Well, but then you're looking at the setup, which is Boruto approaching Momoshiki for the plan. That's ignoring the context that it's ignoring what I'm complaining about. Momoshiki's just depressed sitting there doing nothing for 3 years because he's too depressed to even kill himself. That's what I'm complaining. It's bad.
I don't think it's a problem. I think you don't have to like it. That's fine. You don't have to like it. But I don't think it's a problem. And I don't think you can argue that it's a problem. Right now, at least.
Well, I definitely can argue it's a problem. That's what I've been doing.
Yes, you can do it, but I don't. I don't agree with it, and we've established that already. So,
but then Why? Because wouldn't that be disconnected to whatever they do in the future? Whether Momoshiki has a plan, or whether he actually does do something new or interesting, or whether he goes back to plotting like before, why does the direction they go in matter based on the fact that Momoshiki was depressed here for 3 years? It doesn't change anything.
I don't understand what that means. Yeah, of course things will change as things continue to evolve.
What I'm saying is that clearly there's some sort of inciting incident here with Boruto. He's getting Momoshiki to do something. Whatever he was doing beforehand doesn't matter, because he's doing this one new thing now, regardless of what he was doing before.
What do you mean it doesn't matter? Like, I don't understand. Like,
whether
of course it mattered.
Whether Momoshiki was desperate or depressed or actually just happy or content or whatever, that doesn't change the fact that what he is now is different from that. After Boruto approached him with this plan.
Yeah, well, his reaction to this plan will make him will change his course in some way, presumably. Yeah.
Yeah. So regardless of which course it changes him to, what I'm complaining about is what it's changing him from, since that's disconnected.
So you don't want, essentially what you're saying, I think, is you don't want him to change from his previous role, which was just villainous antagonist, straightforward role like that. You want him to stay that way. I'm not sure why you want him to stay that way, but that's what you want.
So, okay. Let me just ask you this. What direction do you want them to take Momoshiki in any kind of specific detail? If you can just list a hypothetical example.
So I don't really enjoy predicting stories because I don't think it's as fun. But I will say
that's fine.
That I think there's various different possibilities, but I think, like I said, I think a relationship between the two that is transactional, that is more based on I'll give you some, I'll give you, you'll give me some type of thing, is a different, interesting relationship, because Momoshiki has never been in a type of situation where he's had to be even with someone, be transactional with someone like that before. He's always been superior to them, right? So that already is a different, interesting thing to do with his character. Beyond that, they could push him slowly towards the path of some form of redemption, or they could, he could revert back to his old ways, even though he could have an opportunity to change. I'm not sure, but the point is that there's lots of new opportunity with this.
Okay, so regardless of how I feel about that, let's just say that I do agree with that. Everything you said, I agree with. I think that would be a good direction to take Momoshiki in. Let's say that's the direction that Kishimoto does take Momoshiki in. In the future, we'll be able to look back and confirm whether or not it's true. Let's just say it is confirmed. We know for a fact that that's what's going to happen. Kishimoto texted me. He told me that's what's going to happen. Keeping that in mind, it's irrelevant. Knowing the direction of the story, it's irrelevant before Momoshiki was approached by Boruto, with Boruto offering him this plan. It's irrelevant how Momoshiki felt about it going into it.
What does that even mean? I don't understand what you're trying to say.
What I'm saying is, okay. You're saying the future is going to be good, assuming it goes in this direction. If it goes in that direction, it can be good. What I'm saying is that before it has gone in that direction, before Momoshiki was approached by Boruto, before Boruto approached Momoshiki offering him the plan, how Momoshiki felt before the plan is irrelevant to the direction the story goes in. Let's say
I don't think it's irrelevant.
Okay, well, let's just say it does go in that direction. How does Momoshiki's demeanor before being approached by Boruto change this direction, this specific direction?
Because right now he's at his low point, right? Yeah. He has no motivation to do anything, and now he's going to be approached with an opportunity, and so that's why it matters, because he's starting from nothing and going to potentially do more in the future. So yeah, his mentality, it's an evolution of his mentality, from being super confident and cocky to then being his plan being ruined, to then being depressed, to then being presented with a new opportunity. So that's like it's a whole wave of stuff that's happening.
Okay.
So I don't think you can say any of that doesn't matter. I don't think that makes any sense to me.
Okay. Would you agree, though, that this new direction and Momoshiki's 3-year demeanor based around it would also be intertwined based off of his old direction, his part 1 self?
Definitely. And I've already said how that works for me, because he went from being someone who was, someone who was completely controlling and domineering and lazy, didn't want to do anything, didn't want to train at all. He just thought he deserved power, and he wanted everything and all things that he wanted were for himself. And then, of course, he got stripped away of his body, and therefore he became more of a shadowy antagonist figure over time. He took control of Boruto's body occasionally, and we saw that he was able to now put aside his pride in order to use, like Kamui mentioned, shinobi, techniques and things like that. You could say that's a contradiction. I would say that's sort of him slightly evolving in a way, showing what he will do now when he is more desperate. And then it went from that to him, trying to make Boruto despair. That didn't work, and now he's in his lowest point. So it's all intertwined. It's all interconnected. And all I can say is, so far, I think it's been done well.
Well, to clarify, when Kamui says it's a contradiction, you say it's an evolution. You two can just be saying the same thing, just with different words.
I mean, maybe. He's saying it with a bad connotation. I'm saying
no, he's not. He's saying it with a good connotation. We clarified that earlier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in this regard, yeah. So.
Well, I like it, and you don't like it, so that's right. The situation. And it seems we're not going to agree, because you were not giving me arguments that I can really latch onto right now.
I don't like Chapter 80, and I don't like...
I agree. I know you don't like Chapter 80. It's not my favorite chapter either, but I like it more than you do, clearly.
But I'm expecting to like Momoshiki going forwards, and I did like Momoshiki up until that moment.
I thought you were completely in despair about Momoshiki's future, and you thought, he's completely ruined.
But that's the thing, because okay, that's so not fair though, because you're saying that I haven't given you an argument to latch onto. I think that I don't think that's true. I think that you just don't want to listen to me argue.
I'm trying to listen to you, man, but there's nothing there that I can really oh yeah, he has a really good point about this. I just haven't had that yet, being honest,
Well, okay, that as well, I don't think is fair. I think you can think someone has a good point and disagree with them at the same time.
Yes, that's true. I just don't... let's see, in terms of good points you've had so far, let's see. I don't know. You agree with me about Momoshiki's character until the prophecy.
Okay, no. Let me stop you right there. No. We're not gonna play. We're not gonna play that game. Okay, list a good point that I've had that wasn't in agreeance with you first and foremost.
Okay. Man, what a challenge. Okay, let's see.
A challenge.
So, wow.
Yeah. I thought the point that you agreed with me on was actually pretty good.
I don't think any of the clips you showed were at all connected to the situation with Momoshiki, first of all. I mean, there were fine clips, I agree with the things in the clips.
Well, okay. Well, to be fair, the clips weren't necessarily in reference to Momoshiki. They're in reference to Chapter 80 and how the story structure ended with the prophecy arc itself, in which case Momoshiki, the character, is the lifeblood of a story. Momoshiki's the one essentially driving that arc.
Okay. I thought you were talking... I thought those clips had to do with current stuff, but I guess not.
I mean, the clips weren't about characters, so that wouldn't necessarily make sense to be about Momoshiki in the first place, but yeah. In terms of, the story structure is what I was getting at there in terms of the prophecy arc, because, again, that's where our problem really lies. That's why I wanted to make that clarified earlier.
So your problem with the prophecy arc is that it doesn't have... is you don't think its structure works.
Well, me and Kamui have a lot of problems with the prophecy arc.
No, I know, but if you were to boil it down, you would say that you don't like the structure, you think that it should have had a different structure, essentially, because it does have a structure, but it doesn't have the one you want.
I agree. Yeah, well, it's not the one that I want, because the one it did have was good until the ending. But yes, I would say one of my problems with the prophecy arc would be the structure.
All right. I mean, you clearly put
yeah.
like it's fine. Like we can disagree. Like you personally put a lot more emphasis on things like structure and rules than I do. I think that
I don't think there's rules. I think that there's tools. And again, just like the clips earlier were specifying, you can absolutely do a story without structure. There's nothing wrong with that. It can be just as good as any other story. But you should still know why you're doing what you're doing, and so you should be doing everything intentionally, regardless of structure. And structure just helps to like basically just
but you were before what you were
things.
trying to do was trying to say that Momoshiki's character being a villain is inherently not conducive to these rules and therefore is objectively bad. Like that's what we were arguing before, right?
Well, okay, but if we're gonna argue in terms of villains being good or bad, clearly the connotation is around writing, in which case that does become relevant to the conversation. Is Boruto being written with a structure or not? If it's being written with a structure, we should look at the conventional sense of what makes a villain good or bad. That's how we get to the character traits.
Yeah, but it's tricky though, because there isn't one structure that encompasses like the way an entire story is written. Like there's various different, like many authors will essentially pick and choose from various different things. And many authors don't even think of structure when writing. It's just that a lot of reoccurring structure elements happen because they're sort of naturally, they're sort of what comes out of a lot of stories, because that's just how, like, psychologically the way we sort of plot out things to be compelling in some ways.
I do think it's fine for an author to not reference a cheat sheet of a template when they're writing their story in terms of structure. But I think for the most part, they at least subconsciously do structure it. They understand structure as a storyteller.
There has to be, there's generally some form of structure, but it can vary, and it doesn't have to be exact, doesn't have to be precise, etc., etc.
But I do think that structuring things can just make a story a lot more streamlined in general. I mean, there's
it can, but it's not going to inherently make you care about the characters if you've structured things perfectly. But
yeah, and we also agreed earlier that not every arc has to follow one structure. So that's to say the Code arc could follow a different structure from the AO arc, and that AO arc could follow a different structure from the Prophecy arc. One could be a 3-act structure, one could be a 4-act structure, etc., etc.
Even though arcs are, like, I guess you could say sub-stories in a sense sometimes they're just literally parts of a larger story. Like, you could say, like, many of the recent Boruto arcs haven't really been standalone. They've been extremely interconnected. So you can't really look at them separately too much, right?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it's arbitrary about how you want to categorize it. You can go from franchise down to series, down to saga, down to arc, down to what would be the next thing? Scene? Because I feel like it's too small. I feel like there's another one that'd be bigger than that. But either way, you got scene. From there, you got down to sequence. From there, you got down to just individual beats. And then from there, you could just go down to camera cuts.
Yeah, in general, Naruto is one story, Boruto is another story. But of course, they are connected in many ways, especially like thematically and with characters and stuff like that. Yeah,
I agree with that. But you would agree that the Prophecy arc follows a structure.
It does follow a structure, and I think I don't think its problems have to do with its structure. Personally, I think my biggest problem with the Prophecy arc is just in terms of its, the way it presents the emotion, like how compelling it is or not. For example, the scene where Sarada cries to Sasuke, I didn't think it was that. I didn't feel that emotionally because, first of all, we haven't seen Sasuke with his daughter in since since the Shin arc or whatever, and so it feels so distant. We understand that Sarada cares about Boruto, but we don't really understand it that much because she's just sort of been in the background for the longest time. And so that scene in general, that's like the main issue I have with that scene. It doesn't emotionally resonate as much. Same with Boruto's despairing. I think that he should have probably despaired for a little bit before Sasuke saved him. Like, I love that Sasuke saves him and all that. I think that would give him the scene more weight. It would have, given Boruto some turmoil before he overcomes, the whole thing, the whole omnipotence thing. I think that would have been stronger. And then there's like small things like how Mitsuki just vanishes or whatever. So that
Hey.
would be my biggest issue with that.
So, going based off of that, to address something you said earlier in relation to that, yes, different things can affect different people differently in terms of emotions, so it is subjective. But I'm sure you would agree, when it comes to the mass audience, the majority of people, they're likely to feel a certain type of way about an intentional emotion written in the story. That's why I would say that screenwriting is an objective science, because of its ties to psychology. That's why the 9 character traits, the sympathetic traits, even exist in the first place. It's to essentially manipulate the audience emotionally to make them feel a certain type of way, to be clear, concise, to know exactly what you're trying to do, to offer them a promise, a big buy, to emotionally invest them, to make them to relate, all these different things. You're guiding them on an experience. Structure can help with that.
Yeah, of course, but I think that, like, you know, structurally, yeah, you can. Yes, they offer, like, hey, like, this should be how you plot out a character's arc to be most resonant to somebody.
Yeah, and
but
in
it doesn't
fact,
necessarily apply to everybody, and it changes. There's plenty of people that hate certain characters that most people love, or vice versa. For example,
yeah,
this is a good example. I'm watching Naruto for the first time with my sister, and she doesn't doesn't really resonate with Zabuza and Haku very much. She thinks that their story was too quick, that there wasn't enough, time with those characters for her to latch on to them. Whereas most people, and certainly I would say, no, they're very well written, and I definitely feel for them. But she doesn't, feel that way. So it really depends. It's not a be all end all, and that's why I wouldn't really compare it to science, or math for that matter, because those things are very exact, very precise, and I don't think that's how this is. Yeah.
People can disagree with math. They would just be wrong. Likewise, no offense to your sister, but maybe if she watched like an analysis video on Zabuza Haku, she would realize something that maybe she missed. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I've explained to her why I think they're great, and she can say yes, I understand that, like, literally, but I just didn't feel it. And I think stories are inherently how you feel about it. I think that's the main point of it. I don't think saying to people, well, you didn't feel something that is objectively well written, therefore you were wrong, is a very constructive thing to say. I don't think it's fair. I think it's I think it's reasonable. So.
I also don't necessarily agree with that, because you basically have 4 different types of endings when you're writing a story. You have a straightforward ending. That's where you just expect what happens. It's either going to be a good or bad ending. You have an ironic ending. You have a ambiguous ending, and then you have an open ending. And when people try and write an open ending, they're usually just bad at writing. They don't know how to do it. They can't make it clear to where it's either going to be one way or the other way. So they don't know how to do that, and they just write an ambiguous ending because they just aren't good. And so the ending's unclear, it's unresolved. It's like it's not just giving it's not giving ground for the reader to like find an ending on their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that can happen for sure.
Yeah,
you can feel when an author is unsure about something.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the writers are just struggling, and obviously, I would say it's because they don't know how to make the material allow for an open ending, and so it becomes an ambiguous ending, even though that goes against the author's intent. But obviously, that's annoying for audiences, so that's not what they want to be doing.
Yeah, but I do think authors concern themselves too much with what people will think, and I think they should focus on what they want to do. I think that's the most important thing.
Well, an author concerning themselves was not a part of what I was saying there, to clarify.
Yeah, I mean, you said that when they write open endings, they can, like, not do it properly because they're too concerned with, I guess, like, how they should end it. Because ending a story is always a lot more difficult than starting a story, right?
Yeah, again, you probably should have your ending in mind, but you don't need to.
There's always so many examples of not very good endings and very good beginnings. Because it's just inherently harder to end something than it is to start something.
Well, yeah, obviously you need to choose where you need to begin your story. Unless you just have like a thriller story, then at that point, it doesn't really matter. But if you just have like a boring, ordinary world, then you need to like get the story going. You need to get to like a surprise. But outside of that, yeah. But what I was saying in terms of endings is, if someone's trying to make an open ending, it needs to be clear. Otherwise, it's ambiguous. And basically, what I'm saying with the material, if the material isn't present in the story to make it clear, that's just been a skill issue on the author's part. That's not because they're thinking about the audience. That's just, the audience is just the result. They aren't thinking about the audience when they do that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can have a vague ending. I think that's fine depending on what you're doing. But sometimes that happens. It depends what you're talking about, though.
Yeah, ambiguous endings aren't inherently bad. They can be good as well, but either way.
Yeah, actually, I would say things that end too satisfyingly are also not quite good, because you want to believe that the world continues after that point, right?
Yeah, it's all about what you want the audience to leave the theater thinking about, and if you want them to like think about it in terms of a positive experience or not.
Sure.
Yeah, like as an example, Endgame, nobody hated it. Well, outside of, like, I guess the minority of people, but like nobody hated it because it ended before the story ended. Well, technically the story did end, but that part of it. But it's set up for a sequel. Clearly, people know going into it there's going to be a part 2, and so that can help with the ending, essentially. In that case, but yeah. It's all about what you want the audience to think leaving it. Whether they think it's like a good thing that it ended there or not.
You can try to make an audience think about certain elements of something, but you won't necessarily succeed. There's often examples where people will completely misconstrue what an author intended, and the author's like, "Well, I wanted you guys to think this. Why'd you think that? Like, that's not what I wanted." Sometimes that totally happens.
Yeah.
You can try, but you won't necessarily succeed.
Okay.
Depends.
So going back to the comment here, so Kamui's gone, so I don't know.
Can we finish this comment already? My goodness.
Yay! But Kamui says, Kamui just says it makes him a bad villain, but like, what does that mean, realistically speaking? So not only have we broken that down in the past, obviously, but like, as I was just saying, if the prophecy arc is using structure, which you've agreed that it is, we should use the conventional means in order to analyze villains to see if they are a good villain or a bad villain. So we would see what makes a good or bad villain based on the conventional structure.
Well, structures, there's plot structures, there's various different types of things. Just because it uses a plot structure doesn't mean you should use a specific structure, for character writing. I think that's unfair.
Yes, but typically if it's using a specific type of structure, it's also using a specific type of character structure. Like, usually the two would go hand in hand.
Sure. And I would say Momoshiki's arc is pretty good. I don't know.
So off the top of your head, if you don't know, that's completely fine. If you ask me for 90% Naruto arcs, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. But do you know or have any idea of what structure the prophecy arc would be using, since you agree that it is using a structure?
I don't know the names of structures. I'm not that type of person.
That's fair. So, the structures that you do know. I mean, you mentioned 4-act structure before. 3-act structure.
I really don't
pay
attention to structures that much, because I think it's too much theory stuff. I prefer to talk about what makes stories, how do they make people care and emotionally resonate with things. That's more what I care about, because I think when you start getting in the weeds of the very theoretical stuff. That's part of the reason why I wasn't a huge fan of the screenwriting class that I took, because it was too much of, this is how you do things right and this is how you do things wrong. And I was like, that's not helpful. I want to know how, why is a character compelling and why do you find him captivating? There can be 20 different reasons. It could be written out perfectly, but the actor isn't good enough, or something like that, or the directing isn't good enough. So,
obviously, when we look at screenplay or writing in general, that would be pre-production. So you wouldn't be looking at the finished product there. So it would just be inherently baked into the assumption that it would be based off of this rather than any further step down the line.
Right. But anyway, that's just, you care more about structure than I do, and I think that's just inherently the way we differentiate.
Yeah, I mean, based on what you say, it is just guidelines. It helps you to get to people caring. It
can, but also a lot of writers don't use them. They're mainly just after the fact ways of structuring stuff. You know, people didn't first come up with structure and then a story. That's not how it worked. People came up with stories, and then people were like, hey, this is interesting. They follow different patterns. You know what I mean?
Whereas, yes, you do have an insinuation implying it can be a harmful or negative thing, or at the very least that you derive zero value from it, when I think that objectively can't be the case. At the very least, it can't harm you. It can only add value to you. I would say that it sounds like you're saying that it's logic-based, which means it's like the opposite of emotions, which would get to the feelings, which is what has a meaning in story.
I just don't think it's, the be-all, end-all, like you say it is in a lot of cases, but also just not as important as some other things, in my opinion.
I mean, here's something you learned in screenwriting class, assuming you can see my screen.
Yes.
Oh, darn, you can't. Okay, let me, hang on. You can, but you can't. Just change to... no, that's camera. I don't know how to do this, because it's a stupid app.
Like, some people care a lot more about like what you talk about thematically or terms of your message. Some people care a lot more about, you know, the way your characters are written. Some people care a lot more about, you know, like you, for example, the way something is structured. It all depends on personal taste. That's why I think everything is a lot more subjective than not subjective.
What about emotional through lines with emotional circled? That's something you learn in screenwriting class. So to be fair, I do think it's unfair to say that there's nothing in screenwriting class that it's just that certain things in screenwriting, such as structure, is something that you don't really care as much, but you do learn about how to make you care about a character in screenwriting class.
Yeah, but all I can say is the one that I took wasn't as interesting as it could have been. I think it would have been a lot more interesting if we talked about how to write compelling characters, but instead we focus more on other things like, you know, how to write a third act, second act, or first act hook, or whatever the hell. It's just not stuff that I don't know.
Well, no, I do think that both are just as important. Both the plot and the story, the characters and the structure. Because you can have 20 different... The world's most interesting characters in the entire world, but if you don't have a story to go around that in any meaningful way, then the characters themselves aren't going to matter.
I'm not making like a moral argument. I'm just saying that this is the way I prefer things. That's all I'm saying. That's
fair. That's fair.
And I think in terms of storytelling, that's all really you can say. You can't really say, my position is more accurate because I have a PhD, and therefore the stories that I think are good are more accurately good. I don't think that's a reasonable way of looking at things, frankly. I don't think it's fair. Just because you're more clever doesn't mean you inherently have more emotional value than someone else.
Well, I would say that if you not emotional value, but emotional awareness and understanding. I mean, that is why you would agree, probably, I would assume so, that certain people should clinically be therapists and some should not, based on, you know, like PhDs and stuff. So I think the same would apply for like screenwriting. Not to say that someone can say one story is inherently means more than another, but somebody can look at a story and say, regardless of if I like the story or not, I can say this is a objectively good or bad story.
Well, see, you use the words good and bad, but like I think that those are very umbrella terms. Like you can say something is like has a, you know, I don't know, because it all comes down to emotion, right? This is compelling, this is not compelling. Well, for you, it's compelling. For me, it's not compelling. You know, for me, Haku and Zabuza's arcs are very compelling. For my sisters, they're not compelling at all. You know, you can argue like, oh, but they did this and this to make it compelling, and therefore it should be compelling. But I can't argue I can't tell her, well, your opinion is invalid because blah, blah, blah. I just don't think that's a fair way of doing things. I think umbrella terms like good and bad are not helpful. I don't think that's very, you know, saying like the thing that you dislike is objectively good and therefore my stance is better than yours, or vice versa. I just don't prefer that type of talk.
Okay, well, umbrella term, sure, if it's really that vague. But I do think even
like, what does bad mean? Like,
well, let me refine it though. But then even going with based on the emotional arguments, you're using specific words to define it, to try and explain to someone like your sister why Zabuza and Haku are good. You're using specific words. Those words have definitions. Those definitions are rooted in logic. You're still trying to convey ideas to her logically.
Yes.
So based on that, I would say you can make a rubric even based on something like subjectivity or emotion.
You can make a rubric, but the problem, of course, being that not everyone will essentially go, yes, I emotionally resonate with that because I should, she quote unquote should care about Haku, but she just doesn't because she didn't, think there was enough time with his character or whatever else. It just comes out. It's a very subjective thing. It's just not.
I do think the masses would be what matter there, because there are a lot of standout people. There are sociopaths out there in the world. I mean, I'm not going to make any claims, but it's possible that that one of us in here might be a psychopath, and I think we would both at least agree on that.
Anyway, no, but like she's currently writing a story as well. She's very interested in storytelling. It's not like she's completely ignorant about it.
No, that's good.
So it's not like one of those people who are like, just mind-numbingly stupid. Like, there's, you know what I mean? So it just comes down to our different experiences and how we approach things emotionally is very different. So, I just don't think it's very valuable to break down something, quote unquote, objectively in a story and say, hey, therefore it's good, and I say so, like the Mahler sort of approach.
No. Well, to be fair, that's not fair either, because I do think that can build analysis skills, which is just going to help building your story in general.
Yeah, but what does it do to now analyze something? It makes you feel smart. Like, I mean, okay, like sure, it makes you learn, but like,
it gives you experience.
I mean, yeah, but like, what does it tell you emotionally about it? Like, what do you?
That's what you're analyzing. What do you mean? That's a part of the analysis.
No, I mean like. Yeah, I mean, if you emotionally care about something and you're analyzing it through that lens, that's fine. But
you got to like reverse engineer it.
The point is, if you're trying to argue with someone else about why your position is more accurate, that's when I have a problem. Essentially, you can always say, "Hey, this is my position, and this is why I think it is," and then you can analyze your position. That's I don't mind that at all. That's not what I'm talking about.
I do think you got to reverse engineer it, though. When you analyze a story, you're analyzing a story because you care. Why do you care about the story? Why does it matter to you? Well, then you got to work your way backwards. Oh, okay, so the structure sort of guided me here based on this and that, and that's where this happened. Oh, this was intentional. Okay, that's what the author was going for there. And based on that, you can just understand the stories that you like even more.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I mean, I think like... I can't think of any character that I love from Naruto, for example. I can't think of anything that makes me think, you know what? I really love that character because of the structure of their character arc. No, it's about the individual, like,
But that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm doing for Momoshiki, though.
Okay.
Because obviously I'm not saying nowhere have I okay, but you that's not my argument though. Nowhere have I said I dislike Momoshiki because of the structure of his character arc.
Okay.
You can't say,
I mean, you talked about how
you
talked about how like from a screenwriting standpoint, his character is not a villain and therefore bad.
That is not what I said. I did not say he's not a villain.
No, I mean, you say that he doesn't fit the criteria of a villain, even though he's supposed to, and that's bad. That's what you were saying, essentially, I think. I'm pretty sure.
Anyways.
All right, well, anyway, I have to go. But it was fun chatting.
Okay.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, I wish you could stay longer, but if you really have to go... well,
I mean, it's always fun talking about story stuff.
Yeah, last thing I'll say on structure is that if you don't like something in structure, you don't have to throw out the whole structure, because the structure is meant for you to just be able to like take out the chunks that you do like and discard the rest. So even then, I think it's fine.
I'm not throwing anything out. If people use structure, that's fine. I'm not someone who personally writes stories, but I'm someone who likes talking about analyzing stories. I just personally don't have any use for it.
Well, yeah, the structure isn't intended for the audience. It's intended for the writer. So if you were to write a story, would you consider a structure? Or would you just write it?
Probably not, because it's not emotionally important for me, and many writers don't use structure, really, consciously.
Well, I wouldn't use many... Well, first of all, I think many writers is less than half, but either way.
Okay.
Well, you agree.
I mean,
It's not just screenwriter
like,
structure. If you're writing a novel, that's a different kind of structure you can use. So every writer has a type of structure. Most writers use structure.
you could say they use it subconsciously sometimes, in a way. Sometimes they deviate from it. For God's sake, I mean, come on, like, Toriyama didn't use structure, okay? I'm sure Kishimoto, for most of his story, wasn't thinking about a structure. He was thinking about, what would the characters do next? Like, it's just, you know,
Kishimoto
you can use it to build a story,
Toriyama does subconsciously use structure.
Fine, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you don't have to be consciously aware of it. You don't have to think about structure to write a story, necessarily. You can, you don't have to. And that's why I don't think it's... But
structures aren't inherently good or bad. Nobody says a story is good or bad because of the structure. It's because of the structure that the story can be inherently good or bad.
Yeah, I mean, but you asked me, like, would I use structure? And I'm saying probably not, because I wouldn't have any need for it.
Okay.
But it's fine if you want to use structure for your story, Oodie. I'm not saying that's a problem.
Okay.
Unlike you, I'm not going to say that your argument is objectively incorrect. So.
Well, I will go with the guy who's legally able to teach in college classes as a professor.
That's fine. You can listen to him all you want.
Okay.
And I may mainly agree with Robert Mickey. I don't have anything negative to say about him.
Well, I will say it's important because we live in a society, which means to some degree we have to agree with the society more than we disagree with it, in which case we would just go with it.
Yeah. But I think everyone's perspective on emotional perspective is important. And everyone has a different emotional perspective, and therefore they will react differently to different stories.
Some people will. Most people
I think
won't.
that's important. You know, you have a PhD. It doesn't mean you could be totally shut down emotionally and therefore don't experience anything and think every story is bad. Like that could happen.
It's important, but it's not important for the author to consider how people are going to react or respond to this. They should just write the story the best way they can.
Yep. Well, at least we can agree on that.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Why do you have me on? I do plan, however, on...
Uh-oh.
I've been writing this script about the Otsutsuki clan for like a year now.
Okay. Interesting.
I want to make a YouTube video about analyzing each member of the Otsutsuki clan.
Well, I will link your channel in the chat.
If you want to. I mean, it's not going to come out yet.
Well, it'll come out at some point, so I'll subscribe too. Hey, there you go. Now you got your subscriber. Woo! But yeah.
Alrighty.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thanks again.
Okay.
Ciao.
Bye. And chat, don't you worry, I'm not going anywhere. Shout out K Edits, who wants me to rate their edit. Maybe I'll check it out just a minute. But I wanted to respond to the rest of this comment here from Lorge. I never did get to ask him about his 6360, but shout out Lorge, who is a member. So where did we end off? Yeah, I guess we'll go through some of this really quick. Did I link his comment? Did I link this in chat? I think I did. Yeah, I did. Okay. You gonna say a little bit longer? Yeah, since I never actually got through all of these tabs of explanation, how to make them interesting. So yeah, so while unlikable traits create conflict, screenwriters must also provide reasons for the audience to care about the character. So obviously you want to give them a goal, you want to show their humanity, you want to create contrast, you want to give them a challenge. Hey, shout out that. Moving on, the 14 things, I already covered this. I don't feel the need to cover it in greater detail. I'll just quickly show it again for those who want to pause and look at anything. I never actually explained every one of these 14 things, but you can just make your own ideas on this in case you want to. So there is all of them. Yes, and this is by Eric Edson. You can just look this up and you can find a free copy online if you really want it yourself, but yes. Tying sympathetic traits, opposite in scripts. Okay, so here's some of this. So like I said, we have the sympathetic traits and for like characters we root for, but at the same time, there's characters in the story that we want to root against because they're against the main character. And so obviously, we like the hero. That's why we root for them. We want to hate. It's characters we love to hate. We dislike certain characters in a story, and it's good writing if we dislike them. Not every character in a story should be liked. That's different from saying that we dislike Momoshiki, because we dislike him in terms of him being bad, not in terms of our feelings towards him. So that's the difference. We dislike Momoshiki's quality as a character. He's not doing this correctly, since he was doing this. And I would also say, it's unfair to say that, well, first of all, I don't think he did ever explain. He said he did. I don't think he explained why this new direction for Momoshiki would be inherently interesting. Or as opposed to what he was doing before not being interesting. Because what he was doing before was already what he was doing before. Oh, I want you to despair, Boruto the prophecy. I'm an evil mustache-twirling villain. That's the same thing he was doing in the very first arc. Yes, not literally making Boruto despair, but he's still being the same maniacal plotting guy that he always was. That didn't change in part 1. That's only changing now. Seemingly nonsensically for no good reason, since it doesn't make sense anyways. Yes, I understand he lost at the end of part 1. He lost at the beginning of part 1. Why did he give up? Nothing has changed from then to now. He just didn't get his way at some point in time, but like I already said in the first arc, that's inconsistent with this character. When he doesn't get his way, he complains, just like he is as a parallel to Boruto, but he's going to do it anyways. Just like he did in Arc 1. Just like he did in Part 1. Unlike he's doing now, when that hasn't changed. The only thing that changed was the future that he saw didn't come to pass. Okay? The future that he saw didn't come to pass in Arc 1 either. What's the difference? He didn't even see the future in Arc 1 as far as we're aware in terms of the present moment is what I'm referring to in Arc 1. Well, like in Arc 0, in Shippuden, he's not looking to the future to see Arc 1 is what I mean there. I mean, he could have. We don't know whether he did or not, but regardless if he did or not, that's irrelevant to this. Either way, 9 key sympathetic traits and their opposites used in screenwriting are listed below. A character's sympathetic nature is not about being universally good, but rather about having understandable, relatable, and human motivations. See, I would agree with that, and that's something you would learn in screenwriting class, and I feel like that's completely going against what L or J was saying. Screenwriters often use the opposite of these traits to create antagonists or complex anti-heroes. So, for example, let's think of some good villains that are good because we hate them. Because we're meant to not like them, and that's when it's so satisfying when they get their comeuppance, because it's irony or what's the word, karma, like stuff like that. Whenever, especially when the hero overcomes them, when there's an unfair injustice done, not through their actions, not through nuking a child or kicking a cat or whatever else, it's through their traits, their qualities as a character. Again, not their actions, not their behaviors, but who they are. That's an important distinction. Their personality. That's what matters here. So, all of the villains from the Equalizer movies, the Terminator, you could even say, in fact, Kyle Reese even describes it, someone who knows no fear, etc., etc., that speech. You have Lord Farquaad from Shrek. Oh, what do you know? You have Momoshiki! You also have the Fire Lord from Avatar: Last Airbender. You have a couple of the Walking Dead characters, but I always reference that, so I don't want to put that on Kamui this time. You can even reference Spider-Man. That's a great screenwriter's movie. There's a lot of good screenwriters movies, so definitely check a lot of them out. But either way, but all those characters I just listed are good characters because they're so good at being bad because of their personality rather than the things they do. You can say the things they do are driven by their personality, or their personality leads them to do the things they do. But first of all, they need to be in the position of power in order to do that, to be able to have conflict with the main character, hero, protagonist in the first place. But outside of that, it's because they are who they are that makes them a challenge. That's what matters. And so you could even argue that they are in the position they're in because of their personality. in which case I would just say that's natural, that they do the things they do because their personality, rather than something that seems forced or inconsistent with their personality or character or hidden nature, which I would argue is the case with Momoshiki. But anyways, I've had this on screen. You can look at it too if you want, anyone watching the stream. You have all these sympathetic traits on the left and then the opposite on the right. So courageous is what you want and your hero. Cowardly is what you want and your villain. Or it doesn't have to be hero and villain. It's just an easy way to think about it. You can have a protagonist and antagonist. You can reverse the roles. You can have the protagonist be cowardly, and that's something they get over, just like in Tokyo Revengers Season 2. And you can have the antagonist be courageous, just like in Tokyo Revengers Season 2. Okay. And likewise, it doesn't even need to be protagonist and antagonist. It can just be one of the supporting characters, either on the protagonist or antagonist side. Someone that hinders or helps the main character. It depends what role you want of the 14 character archetypes. Hey, back to that. But yeah, anyways. So again, the first one is courageous and cowardly is the opposite of that. The second one is someone who takes action. And then the opposite of that would be someone who's passive or apathetic. It's a dislikable trait. That doesn't mean you don't have to like the character. For example, Hinata technically has that trait in a lot of part 1. Basically just a catatonic character. Even Sakura, you could say, oh, she's a useless because she's only defending, whereas Naruto and Sasuke, they're going out there and actually fighting. And yeah, to be fair, a lot of people do hate Sakura's character, but that's because they're dumb and stupid and wrong. But again, usually whenever these traits are written into a character that you're supposed to like, it's because that character overcomes that trait. Either because it's an injustice put on the character, either from birth, if they're just born that way, and that's something that they have to struggle to overcome, that's their weakness, and they have to have the strength in order to overcome it, in which case they're taking action, ironically, to overcome their inability to take action. Or it could also be empathy, which is different from sympathy. For example, the first Night of the Living Dead zombie movie, the main character is a girl, she becomes catatonic, essentially, just unable to do anything at all because she's processing all these crazy emotions of the zombies taking over and killing her brother before her very eyes. And this movie takes place over the course of like a couple hours, like one night. So it makes sense. But yeah, even then, George Romero said he didn't like the main character being as catatonic as she is, even if she's processing emotions. But either way, again, because it just makes her a dislikable character in some way, an unsympathetic character at the very least. Just realistically how you got to think about it. Because yeah, Momoshiki is supposed to be unsympathetic. We aren't supposed to sympathize with him. We're supposed to like him. We're supposed to enjoy seeing him. That doesn't mean he's supposed to be sympathetic. He's supposed to be unsympathetic because he is supposed to be evil in part 1. Regardless of the new direction, his part 1 story is intertwining with this part 2 story through this pivotal turning point, assuming he is changing, which he might not even be. But assuming he is changing, his part 1 self connects to his part 2 self, his new direction, through his old direction, here. He's supposed to be unsympathetic. But either way, vulnerable is a sympathetic trait. That's the third sympathetic trait. And the opposite of that would be invulnerable or insecure. Understandable, self-explanatory. The fourth sympathetic trait, self-sacrificing. What's the opposite of self-sacrificing? It's selfish. Okay, the fifth trait, loyal. The opposite of that, disloyal or traitorous. The sixth sympathetic trait, humble and fair. Opposite of that is arrogant and unfair. Makes sense. You then have funny or witting, and then opposite of that is humorless or callous. You also have underdog for sympathetic, and then unsympathetic, entitled or powerful. Hey, what do you know? Like Boruto and Momoshiki, and even Tento was entitled in part 1 of Mujita Bandits arc. Wow, it almost like this perfectly aligns. Then you also have human and relatable as the last sympathetic trait, and then perfectionist or unrelatable, just like Momoshiki. Hey, what do you know? A lot of this applies to Momoshiki. When in part 1, not in part 2. Hey, because he's no longer unsympathetic. He's just someone that we just don't care about at all, because he doesn't care. We care about characters who care about things. That's why we care. We relate to them. What do you know? That's based in screenwriting. What do you know? Wow. Okay, so let's look at this. Let's just double check to see what Momoshiki is. Well, in part 1, he wasn't cowardly. In part 2, he's not cowardly. He doesn't have any emotions at all. In part 1, he wasn't passive. He was active. as any good antagonist should be, but in part 2 he absolutely is passive and apathetic. He doesn't care about anything. He doesn't even care about dying, even though he wants to. I wouldn't say he's invulnerable or insecure. You could make that argument. I don't really care. He's not being selfish because he doesn't care about anything, let alone himself. He's not disloyal because he doesn't have any loyalty to be disloyal about. He can't be a traitor to Boruto until now because there is nothing to be traitorous about. He wasn't doing anything. There was no side to pick. He wasn't on a side anymore. He's not being arrogant. He's not being unfair. If anything, Boruto's likely being unfair to him by tricking him. He's definitely humorless. I'll give him that. Callous is funny. He's definitely not being cruel. He's not being anything at all. He's definitely not being entitled. He's not being powerful, unlike in part 1, where he was, just like in part 1 when he was in Perfectionist. And unrelatable. He technically was relatable to Boruto in some ways, in half the ways. Well, in one of the ways, anyways. He's definitely not relatable to anyone like I know. Not now. Oh my god. But that's that tab. We have adversary traits. To go along with what we just looked at, here's some more adversary traits. Adversary opposes the hero more powerfully than any other character. Well, I guess Momoshiki's not being an adversary. To be fair, there's supposed to be main adversary, who's supposed to be Juro right now, and or Kawaki, depending on how you see about it, but yeah. I'm not gonna read all of this explanatory explanation. You can pause to read it if you want, because I'm just trying to get through all this pretty quickly now. By the way, is Immortal still here? He's not. I was gonna invite him. That's sad, because I wish I did invite him when he was here, but oh well. Number 2 for adversary traits by Eric Edson. The adversary should not be a group of people or an idea, but one individual. Well, you could say that applies to Momoshiki. That's a thing. Yeah. Unless you consider Kinshiki to be inside of Momoshiki. Haha. Number 3, an effective adversary looks unbeatable. Wow. I guess Momoshiki is as ineffective as it comes. He definitely isn't appearing to be powerful at all. Boruto has all the power in this scenario. The adversary always attempts to confront and stop the hero. Well, considering he's never done it, even once, not to stop him, but not to even confront Boruto. Boruto has to go out of his way to confront Momoshiki. Momoshiki's being the least adversarial character in this entire story. Heck, frickin' Sumire is more adversarial to Boruto than Momoshiki is based on this. Psychologically, the adversary can be the flip side of the hero herself. I don't know why herself instead of himself or themselves, but whatever. Well, considering they both want to die, both Boruto and Momoshiki, I'm not going to say that applies here. I'd say it applies to part 1, but not to part 2. An adversary may use helpers who carry out his will against the hero. Well, Momoshiki isn't doing that. A hero should not be his own adversary. That doesn't apply to Momoshiki. A natural disaster isn't an adversary. Doesn't apply to Momoshiki. An adversary can wear the mask of friendship or romance and not be revealed as the true opposing force until the end, but still remains the adversary throughout. I'm not going to say that applies to Momoshiki. You can say it applies specifically to the context of Two Blue Vortex. I think that's dumb, considering, even L or J was agreeing that that's dumb based on what he was saying about the fact that the mangas are two different things, and that was a critique that we had. So he is using part 1 as context for Momoshiki. He will not look at the story in 2 different parts. He will not look at Two Blue Vortex as its own independent, separate medium, manga, material, whatever from part 1. They are one connected story to him, so this is not a new Momoshiki. This is the same character. And so that means this would not apply. Number 10, the adversary will not always be a bad person. Oh, God. We gotta look at the context for this one. An adversary is the main opposing force, but he or she is not necessarily a bad or evil person. Well, that doesn't apply to Momoshiki already, but some of the most interesting adversary characters are good people who fall into opposition with the hero only because of circumstances. Well, what do you know? It doesn't apply to Momoshiki. It applies to characters like Sasuke in part 1. Whoa, wow, what do you know? What I'll say is that the villain will never, usually, Unless they're just being the villain on purpose. But the villain, in 99% of cases, do not view themselves as a villain. Everyone's the good guy of their own story. Yes, it's a cliche. Yes, everyone already knows that generic umbrella idea, but I'm going to say it anyways because it applies here in this specific context. Number 11, the adversary can never become the hero, but sometimes can dominate the story. Okay, yeah, I think that like applies like Light Yagami and Death Note, but either way. Number 12, when romance becomes the dominant plot, which obviously that's technically it's becoming the dominant plot here. So let's see what it says. The hero's object of affection serves an adversary. Ooh, okay, so Momoshiki's gonna use Boruto's non-love for Sarada and Sumire, considering Sumire and Sarada is the one that loved Boruto, and it's not going both ways. So Momoshiki's gonna use that against Boruto, which he can't do. Okay, interesting. Well, Momoshiki's the worst adversary I've ever seen. Let's break it down further. So here's something that he learned from 6 great movie villains. William Dafoe in Spider-Man. The villain can represent the echoing dark side of the hero. Hey, just like Momoshiki! This way the hero ends up fighting a flawed aspect of him or herself. That's exactly what Momoshiki is. Wow, but that doesn't apply to Tubu Vortex, unfortunately. Tom Cruise in Collateral. Definitely another screenwriting movie. Definitely check it out. This villain taught the hero how to confront his own fears, and the hero discovers within the courage to defeat the villain. Well, considering Boruto's having to confront and force Momoshiki to do anything at all, doesn't apply. Meryl Streep in The Devil Wears Prada. Oh yes, another screenwriting movie. Give your villains a cause for their own inner suffering to make them fully dimensional. Momoshiki, well, based on that, Momoshiki's the best villain of all time. Momoshiki's suffering more than any adversary I've ever seen. But no, I don't think that's fair because he doesn't actually have a cause because he's suffering for no reason that makes sense. So there you go. Angela Lansbury in The Manchurian Candidate, a perfect example of screenplay writing that turns the notions of heroes and villains upside down. Well, Momoshiki definitely has been turned upside down, I'll give it that. When mothers are villains and assassins are heroes. Ooh, interesting. Again, like there's a lot of different roles, anti-villain, anti-hero. There's a lot of different ways to think about it. You look at The Boys, that's definitely doing the opposite archetype to where the heroes are the villains and the villains are the heroes, the main characters, basically, technically. But it's all about the ethics and the morals and basically, yeah, I don't even need to go in explanation beyond that. That's the most simple way to think about it, so. Stephen Lang in Avatar. The villainous Colonel Miles, I don't even want to say the last name, is a man just doing his job, and his work has dulled his sense of right and wrong. Yeah, I do think that's similar to, what movie was that? It's the movie where the guy starts off as an assassin, and he's the best assassin in the world. That's his ordinary world, where he's desensitized to killing because he snipes someone that's moving in a train at like 400 miles an hour because he's the best assassin in the world. I think that's a movie to where he gets cloned. It's like a 9 out of 10. I can just double check really quick. I don't know if this is the movie, but I can definitely check the movie that I think it might be. Just give me a second. Let me just double check on my notepad, on my phone, and go down to movies, which is right. Where is it? Right there, ranked movies. I have watched 575 movies. Let me scroll to 9 out of 10 movies. Because I was at 4 out of 10, so it takes a while to scroll. Okay, 9 out of 10. What movie am I thinking of? Not Mr. Nobody. It's around that rating. I thought it was a 9.1. Independence Day? No, Gemini Man. I think it might be Gemini Man, because I think Gemini Man is the one where he clones himself. But I don't know if that's the one where he's the assassin at the beginning of the movie that shoots the guy in the train. Well, if it is, there you go. But yeah, he's just like that guy. Just like the guy in Manchurian Candidate, and just like the guy in Avatar. But yeah. When the hero is an assassin, and just when it's dulled, his sense of right and wrong, it's his last job. He's so used to it. He's the best assassin in the world. It might be a wrong movie. I don't know. Might be a different movie. Anyways, Michael Douglas in Wall Street. Hey, another movie. This villain hides in the form of a mentor, offering logical but bad advice. Oh, I think that could apply to Koji, but that definitely isn't applying to Momoshiki, unless you want to count the prophecy arc when he advised Boruto to jump when Mitsuki was attacking him. Hey! The hero must learn that the villain is dead wrong. Well, well, that definitely applies to Momoshiki. Momoshiki's definitely dead wrong. He couldn't be more wrong. God. I wanted to look at the transcript for this. Do you want the audience leaving the theater wondering, I wonder, did he ever really come to... Okay, you know what? Let's just watch the video.
Do you want the audience leaving the theater wondering, I wonder, did he ever really come to terms with his feelings toward his brother? Or are those two guys going to fight for the rest of their lives? And you can leave that open. And he loves his brother, hates his brother, and it's never resolved.
He's talking about the context of a specific movie, but remove the context. Do you want the audience to know about, or to like think about the ending of your movie? Like after the audience leaves the theater, what do you want them to think about? And again, the question is, can conflict be resolved or unresolved?
And you want the audience thinking about it as they leave. And that might be a real pleasure for the audience to realize, these family things, Cain and Abel, these things go on and on and on. There really is no end to them. And that might be a very, satisfying experience for an audience to realize that certain conflicts are never resolved. And if you write it beautifully so that is an aesthetically satisfying experience, the realization that this is just going to go on, and there's an insight in that, then the answer, of course, be yes.
So that was what I'm talking about, ambiguous versus open endings. That's an example of an open ending to where it could go, it's whatever way the audience wants to invent the ending to be. Or it could be an ambiguous ending if you don't even need the ending. And there's a beauty to that. There's the finite point to where it cuts off. You don't need to know what happens after that, because everything that happened up until that point, even if it has no definitive ending, it's completely unclear, completely ambiguous, could have gone any which direction. There's no sense of right or wrong or good or bad. It's what led up to whatever that ambiguous ending is that has a beauty to it being ambiguous and poetic because it doesn't have an ending. So what he just described here was the positive connotation when you leave a theater. And you do want the audience to think about it in that kind of way. You want the audience to leave the theater thinking about the movie. He just described the good way of it. But there's another side of it. So now he's about to describe the bad way when an audience leaves a movie because a screenwriter messed up somewhere along the way and something went wrong and something didn't make sense and it's a bad thing. And the audience is leaving the theater like, really? They ended it there? But what happened next? Like, that doesn't even make sense. Why would they end it there? Like, he's about to basically go on that kind of example there.
I mean, if they're leaving going, it's not over. I mean, people are going out going, wait a minute. What went on between those brothers? And they're arguing with themselves or with each other. Now you got people upset.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's the difference right there. And that's not because the audience. That's because the movie itself. It's like I was saying, whenever the writer is inequipped to write the material, the substance of the movie, to bring that audience to an intended sensation when they leave the theater, that's a bad thing. It's a skill issue. When you try and do one thing and it doesn't work out because the audience just disagrees. The audience is the one who's, would be the word, not devouring the movie, but like not compatible. I think it starts with consuming. The audience is the one consuming the movie. The movie's made for the audience. So that's important to keep in mind. That's important what you got to consider. So even if the author views nothing wrong, the author could just be wrong. It's not made for them. It's made by them. In a way, it's made for, like, the author should make it for themselves. But they do need to be considerate to the audience they're making the movie for.
Something open that they thought was going to be closed. And so the answer is always yes. You could do anything you want, but does it work or not work? And
that's what matters. Kishimoto can do whatever he wants. He is doing whatever he wants. That's not inherently good or bad. It's after he's done what he wants, does it work or does it not work? And we've clearly explained, not just in the stream, but in all the streams, it doesn't work. It hasn't worked. It does not work. Some people might like it because emotionally, and they aren't thinking about it beyond that. But then are you even really emotionally tied to it to that high of a degree if you can't even explain why you think it's good emotionally? Like you can't care about it that much if you don't have a clear, concise, not even concise, but defined, enriching experience, analysis, thematic breakdown to explain why exactly it's good, to be able to go in depth, to be able to go in detail, to be passionate about it. If you just like it because like, oh yeah, it's cool, I guess, that's serviceable. You, I guess, weren't as bored as you could have been or were before. It's better in comparison to the crap life you already have, I guess. Or you just haven't seen enough stories to know what an average story looks like, and so you look at Two Blue Vortex and you don't even know it's bad. You don't have anything to compare it to on average. I don't know. It's like,
and often you're never going to get an answer to that until you finally write it, put it in front of people, see how they react, to figure out does it work or not.
And that's exactly why you need to write the story with that not in mind, because you're not going to have an answer. There is no answer until you put it in front of people. But you can preemptively prepare by making the story good. Not by considering the audience, but by making the product the audience is going to react to. So not to consider the audience's reaction to the product, but to consider the product the audience is going to react to. That's what you're writing. You're not writing the audience's reaction. You don't control that, and you don't know what that's going to be. But through screenwriting principles linked to psychology, linked to the 9 sympathetic traits, you can intentionally write a way to persuade or manipulate or promise emotions from the audience. And 9 times out of 10, it is going to work if you know what you're doing as a writer. Doesn't apply just to screenwriting. This is anatomy of a story. Applies to all mediums of writing.
And so you have to experiment and try and test it on people. And the answer is, could I do it? Of course you could do it. The reason is, why are you doing it?
Exactly. Exactly. You can do whatever you want, but if you don't have a reason, why? Then why are you doing it? Just cause? To be different? To be an eccentric author? Oh, God. Even worse, if you don't even know, if you're not doing it to retaliate, you're just writing what you were forced into the role. Kishimoto they just flip the coins like, oh, Kishimoto, you're running out. Oh, crap. Okay. Yeah, sure, fine. Oh, sure, I'll just write whatever. Is that what happens? God.
Make it work.
Yeah, so how do you make it work? Well, if you're Kishimoto, you don't. Okay, a couple more things here. Opposite of unlikable traits in screenwriting. So I thought this would be another way to look at this from a different perspective, since these are different traits. Ignoring the prompt, because again, I just know how to prompt. For screenwriting, the most effective opposite of unlikable character trait is a redeeming quality that creates complexity, not simply a good version of that bad trait. A one-dimensional, perfectly good character is often as uninteresting as a one-dimensionally bad one. What they mean by one-dimensional, for those who don't understand, one-dimensional means they have one intentional contradiction, and that's a good thing. A one-dimensional character is not a bad character. I think that a two-dimensional, realistically, a three-dimensional character should be what you're striving for. That's what you should aim for. You should aim for a three-dimensional character, a character with 3 contradictions. 3, or realistically, 6 traits that contradict one another. Realistically, it's one trait that contradicts another, and then you do that 2 more times, rather than all 6 traits. What? One trait contradicts all 5 of the other, and you do that for all 6 traits? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying 3 contradictions. 3 sets of 1 contradiction, if that makes it more clear. That's what you should aim for. But that's what they mean by one-dimensional. It's 1 contradiction. But the goal is to create a multi-layered character, yes, that an audience will want to watch. That's how you add depth and richness to a character. That's what makes them interesting, compelling. That's how you see their true nature, through their contradiction. Once you, their hidden nature, once you apply pressure, that's when it comes out. Not through what they say, but through what they do, the actions, the choices they make, even if they don't always approve of their actions. So, ignoring that, since that has nothing to do with down here. So you have the opposite of common likable trait. So basically down here, ignoring all that, what you have just mean, bad guy traits, unlikable traits. It's unsympathetic. So these are just extra traits. You also have examples over here and descriptions of, I guess, why. Yeah, you just have a lot of words here, but like more descriptive of stuff there. And I'm not going to say that. I'll just say the extra traits here. So selfish, we already had this one before. Apathetic, we had that one before. Lazy is a new way to word it. I think it was unpassive, or it was passive before. Passive or apathetic, I think is what. So lazy is another way to word it. Arrogant or cocky. I think we had arrogant before. We didn't have cocky. Know-it-all. That's a new way to word it. Cruel or bullying. That's, again, another way to word it. Dishonest or deceitful. We might have had one of these before, but it's a new way of wording at least one of these. But yeah. And again, if you want to look at all these to the side, definitely pause. So there you go, there you go, there you go, there you go. There you go, there you go. Hey, there's your screenwriting for the day. Balance the scales, give them a relatable goal, introduce an even worse villain, embrace the anti-hero's journey. Okay. Well, Porto Tubular Vortex definitely isn't introducing an even worse villain through Momoshiki. Not yet, anyways. The joke there. You could say that Jura was a worse villain than Code, and that's how you got to that, but Momoshiki's not being an even worse villain. You could say an even worse villain was after Boro transformed and Momoshiki came out, but he was being villainous, but he wasn't being villains to our heroes, so that doesn't apply. And then again, you could argue a worse villain was Momoshiki after Ishiki was dying. At some point in time, Momoshiki became an even greater threat than Ishiki. If not in power, dominating power, if not in that, then at the very least, they were like relative in that. Or at some point, obviously, Momoshiki did surpass Ishiki when he's dying and becoming weaker and weaker. But it definitely a higher stake threat in terms of not necessarily just his goal, because he wants to kill Kawaki now by putting him in the Tin Tails instead of just putting a karma on him, which makes him a potential threat in the future, in which case, not even necessarily, because you could just kill Kawaki, same as Boruto, but they don't want to do that. But more specifically, in the fact that you're now fighting someone that you love and your brother or student with Sasuke and Kawaki, rather than Ishiki, who is an Otsutsuki threat who you all hate. Kawaki has a personal vengeance, but I guess so does Naruto, through all the children that Ishiki hurt, but as we saw through Delta, but outside of that, yeah. Anyways, we also have, what are the opposite of likable traits in screenwriting? A lot of different prompts here. In screenwriting, the opposite of likable traits are character flaws that make a character selfish, destructive, hypocritical, or unempathetic. A lot of words there. Yeah, a lot more words down here too, okay. So what I would say about this is flaws is another thing. Flaws are a good thing to write in a character. You should write flaws. You do not want a Gary Stu or a Mary Sue. So it's about when you write flaws, what flaws you write, how many flaws you add, the purpose of the flaws as well. There's a lot of things you got to do when considering flaws. But I would say flaws are not independent from this. They're connected to this, but they're also different. So it's similar but different. It's intertwined, but it's also its own thing, if that makes sense. But I would also say empathetic does tie in here as well. So for those who don't know, empathy and sympathy are two different things. That's why I keep clarifying sympathetic traits, the 9 sympathetic traits. That's different from empathy. The way I would describe that difference, so I would describe empathy, sympathy, and pity as different things, and how that plays out for the audience is sympathy is something the characters like. It's a reason to like the character. Pity is just like an awe moment. That's easy. It's like aw. But then empathy is it conveys like an oh. It's like a surprise for the audience. Like, oh, I thought it was one way, but oh, it's actually this other way. And oh, that's sad actually. Oh, I didn't expect that. Oh, that's the truth of the character. Now I get it. It's not an aha moment, but it's like it's an impactful moment that hits you because it's sad, rather than sad from the beginning is one way to describe that, I would probably say. If that makes sense. I don't know, maybe it doesn't to you, but it does to me. But yeah, that's how I would explain that. There's also other ways to think about empathy versus sympathy. In fact, we can just look that up really quick. empathy versus sympathy in screenwriting. Sympathy is pity for a character's misfortune. I think that it's 3 different things. Here's a different chart for it too. Let's just open the chart. Okay, so yeah, sympathy is passive, feeling sorry for someone from your own point of view and offering unsolicited advice and passing judgment, whereas empathy is active, understanding someone's feelings as if they were yours and getting to the root of the problem, offering comfort. So there is also, in screenwriting, usually a difference between empathetic and sympathetic characters when it comes to heroes and villains. You want your heroes to be one type of way, and you want your villains to be a different type of way. So whenever you hear someone say, oh, that's an empathetic hero, or oh, that's a sympathetic villain, or the other way, that's why. It's intentionally, because there is that difference. It's not that these are interchangeable words. They do have different connotations, different meanings in its entirety. That's way too much to go over there. But yeah, so you, in some ways, you can say that Momoshiki has qualities that we would like to see in a character. For example, he's intelligent, he's cunning, he's hilarious at points. These are 3 different traits that people would like to see. Even outside of Arc 1, you could say that Momoshiki is working hard at some point in time. That's an empathetic trait or sympathetic trait as well. For example, especially in the prophecy arc, you could argue, but at the same time, he's being overconfident and he becomes desperate. He's definitely being active at some point, but he's being passive, almost intentionally so, going out of his way to be passive as much as he can, anyways. Not out of laziness, but out of, again, overconfidence. But yeah. Either way, that's more or less the definition, and there's a ton of videos on it. In fact, I have this video saved. Empathetic trait. Oh, no, that's sympathy. Okay, let me go to empathy. Sympathy, empathy overlap. A great story gives us both. The villain is sympathetic, the hero is sympathetic. There you go. Sometimes they overlap. Let's see, where do I have that? Right here. Sympathetic characters are understood. We get their motives even if we don't agree. And that's sympathetic. Someone who wants to prevent suffering because they've lived through it. So yeah. So sympathetic characters are understood, and empathetic characters are felt. There's the difference. We've lived their pain. Their journey is our journey. Loss, fear, insecurity, trauma. We've been there. That's empathetic. And that's the difference. While we're here, let's just see what this says about contradictions. Things that we find intriguing because they are not what we expect and allow us to portray complexity or depth, dimension, whatever word you want to use there. Contradictions can be physical, big but scared, dispositional, childlike but serious as an example, or behavioral. The example is kind to enemies, unruly to friends. Yeah, there's just 3 different examples of what a contradiction can be and 3 different ways to play out those contradictions. But yeah, again, contradictions are good things in the story. It's things that we find intriguing because they're not what we expect. It allows us to portray complexity. Exactly. They allow us to portray complexity. That's a good thing, right? So again, just to clarify for L or J who didn't get that earlier, when we say Momoshiki is a character with contradictions, we're saying he's a complex character. And we're saying why he's a complex character, and we're through clarifying what those contradictions are. But anyways, back to this. Undesirable qualities serve as a primary source of a character's internal conflict and are essential for creating compelling drama and a character arc, especially if it's character versus self, but I don't think that applies in this case. So narcissistic and arrogant are examples of unsympathetic traits, selfish and destructive flaws even. Self-destructive and reckless. That's an example of characters that we don't like, or at least, if not characters that we don't like, then an unlikable quality in a character we do like, which can also lead the way to tragedy, which, if written intentionally, is a good thing in a story. Greedy and materialistic, controlling. We already had callous, but hostile I think is new. Disloyal, deceitful, already had that. Manipulative, I think that might be new. Vindictive is new. Cruel, we've had. Insecure, I don't know if we have that. Passive and timid, we definitely had passive, I don't know about timid. Inability to trust, well, that's a new way of saying it. Paranoia, yeah, unwillingness to believe others, there you go. Stemming from past betrayal trauma is also interesting. Perfectionist, already have that. Victim mentality, that's also new. Well, Momoshiki definitely has that, and I definitely do not like Momoshiki. So hey, there's the explanation of why in terms of psychology. And I also wish that LJ was here to say this. I wanted to say this. He never let me get this out. But the same thing that he did with Zabuza and Haku, he's using descriptive words to define or describe, using definitions, why logically he emotionally likes characters, Zabuza and Haku. The same thing can be said with his explanation for why he didn't like Sasuke and Sarada. He explained why. His explanation had nothing to do with him personally, why he personally didn't like it, out of universe, something to do with the audience. It exclusively, because I was going to point this out as something like almost hypocritical, it exclusively, his reason for not liking it had to do with the story, something in universe. He was able to define, to describe in the story why it was bad. And you can say to him or whatever, but he's able to do specific, detailed, descriptive reasons of why. I think one of them was because we didn't see a lot of time between Sasuke and Sarada beforehand. That doesn't go on him as an audience member. That goes on Ikimoto as a writer. That is a problem with the author, not the audience. So yes, where some audience members can be different, maybe some people did like that moment. His reason for not liking it isn't because of himself personally being different from other people or different audience members, or because of he, as a type of audience member, didn't apply to this specific relatable idea. It's because it was written poorly by Ikimoto, who wrote it bad. And that's what we're saying with Momoshiki. He just disagrees. He just thinks we're the problem. I disagree. I think Ikimoto's the problem. But yeah. The last thing to go over here. If you're writing an action movie about somebody who's pure evil, it's easy to make them unlikable. You can show him stomping on a kitten or nuking a child. That's exactly the example I used earlier. But if your scripts skew more towards the plausible, one easy way to come up with ideas for that is to look at what makes people likable and then have your unlikable characters do the opposite. And so here is some examples of some traits here in some real world. Again, this is psychology. This doesn't have to do with screenwriting. This is a book about real life. But characteristics of likable business leaders. The whole point is likable traits, likable qualities, likable, just characteristics. So someone who can listen, someone who has authenticity, a character with transparency, honesty, it builds trust. Someone who's transparent. Someone who's adaptable, like Momoshiki was all throughout part 1 until the very end in Two Blue Vortex, where he just lost any and all sense of adaptability because he's an inconsistent character, which makes him bad. Simplicity. Oh, he's definitely the most simple he could ever be right now. Gratefulness. That doesn't apply, obviously, in this case, but yeah, so that's what I wanted to go over. That was basically everything. So hopefully now you understand why Momoshiki's a bad character. But anyways, going through this comment just one more time. We blatantly just discussed and disagreed on a lot of the second paragraph here. We already did the first paragraph, so after all these garbage behavior, etc. Well, that would just be visual storytelling, which is a visual medium, but regardless of that. Momoshiki is essentially resolved. Anyways, I could make the argument that him being depressed and complainy is more interesting character-wise than if he was just evil and plotting things, because that wouldn't really add to his development. Again, it wasn't adding to his development throughout all of part 1. You weren't complaining after the first arc, but I don't want to get Kamui too worked up. And then I comment in response to specifically that. But what I will say is screw Kamui. Let him get worked up. I, Oodie, want to hear your argument. Please. That was 3 days ago. 2 days ago. Please make the argument for him being depressed and complaining. He is more interesting character-wise than if he's just evil and plotting something. Notice how he didn't reply? As if he didn't have an answer to that? And I did want to get to that. That's one of the main things I wanted to go over, but obviously we ran out of time and just couldn't do that. So we'll have to do that next time. But I will be sure to ask him about that. In fact, I'll do it right now. Oh, this is stupid. Lots of things in chat. See, Kamui, Herman sounds so tired. He definitely was, both physically and metaphorically. I feel like arguments with Oodie about Image 8. Hand away! Have you served as usual? Thanks, shout out! Guys gonna brainstorm what plan he's capable of doing? That's the problem. He shouldn't be capable of it, because if we're gonna take him at his face value, he's just not able to take over, even though that's a retcon. But assuming he can't take over, then it would just have to rely entirely on Boruto, and Momoshiki has no power at any point in time, and at any point in time, Boruto can just say no. In fact, I have no reason to see why this would be a permanent thing, even if Boruto lets him take over. He would just have to perpetually agree to forever let Momoshiki take over, and at literally any point, Boruto could just take back over. So at no point is it permanent. At no point can Boruto just be forced to the back of his mind. It's ridiculous. And we'll get into this another time, but it's so stupid that this isn't JJK. People are treating it like this is some sort of vow that Boruto's not able to just go back. This doesn't even have to be a trick. There's no trick here. He doesn't have to lie to Momoshiki. He can just not do it. It's as simple as that. But like, at no point here does Momoshiki have to go out. Like, if you're Momoshiki and you're thinking that Boruto's lying, it doesn't matter. Even if you go into it with that idea, it's like, okay, I have hope that he's telling the truth, but if he's lying, then it's the same. Nothing changes. Momoshiki doesn't lose anything. He has nothing to gain. Well, because technically Boruto's telling the truth, he has something to gain. But he knows that's not guaranteed. Why would he even think Boruto's telling the truth? Or rather, why would Momoshiki be incapable of having the capacity of thought that Boruto could be lying? So because of that, sure, you might as well go along with the plan. There's nothing to lose, I guess. But at that point, if Momoshiki loses because Boruto is so unfairly cruel to Momoshiki, it doesn't matter. Boruto's doing what I would expect him to do. Same with Momoshiki. And Momoshiki should expect Boruto to lie. So Momoshiki shouldn't be losing anything. The only, like L or J said, Momoshiki's at rock bottom, and I think he got there in a stupid, unfair way. But he's at rock bottom, regardless if it makes sense or not. This doesn't bring him back up to the top. Until Momoshiki gets his way, which is a permanent takeover, he doesn't go up at all. Momoshiki stays at rock bottom, and he's going to for the rest of the story for obvious reasons that Boruto's the main character. It's so obvious it's not going to work out the way it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. So no, Momoshiki's going to stay at rock bottom for the rest of the story. Ever since the end of part 1, he is a loser who failed, and that's all he will ever be. He's not going to be anything greater in 2 Blue Vortex. Kishimoto might do a shallow veil to make us think he's gonna be something greater than he's actually gonna be, but he's not actually gonna be, and it's not gonna make sense if Momoshiki despairs again. He's at rock bottom, he's despairing. He couldn't despair harder than he is right now. He's at his maximum despairiness. That's not gonna go down. For the exact reasons he listed. It's like, oh, Boruto, you're tempting me. Oh, well, but at the same time, I have to just trust you and believe that you're going to do that. So, and I don't think you will. So, if you do, then cool. I guess from that moment forwards, then I'll be happy. But until then, I have nothing to lose. Like, if you dangle that key in front of me and take it away, I'm in the exact same position. When you dangled it in front of me, I didn't feel anything. I don't see why it wouldn't feel like that, so. Wondering what Momo's fate at the end of the series will be with how Momo's character is written so much. Well, space. I think you just wrote something wrong. Momoshiki's character is being written so little. But maybe it will start being written more. But either way, back to the comment. Oh, you're right. Okay, yes. Let me put this in Boruto topics. And also general chat along with my replies. So stupid. Okay, I really wish we got to do this during the stream, but hello. So let me just reply to him. Okay. Well, I don't know how to make it more clear than that. That's what I was going for. Clear and concise. There's no way to misinterpret it. Either way. Back to the comment. All in all, unless you supply me with a valid reason. And that's why I did everything that I did today. I didn't want to just... That's what I was saying earlier. I didn't want to just meme around with Kamui and be like, oh, it's because he's bad. Because he clearly didn't like that last time. So for all those in the back who didn't hear it the first time, you know, the first 2 years we complained about, you know, the video from 2 years, because I don't want to just be able to point to that. I don't want to point from a video 2 years ago to explain my problems with Momoshiki, even though it's just as valid as back then, if not more. But I want to be able to point to something new that's this year, even if it's all recap. You know, because there's people coming in and out like every day. There's new people here right now, even, probably, possibly. Or there could be here people in the future that are here because I point to this instead of Kamui's video, hypothetically. Even though this isn't necessarily the best thing ever. Like, the Kamui's video is probably better than this, but either way. Like, I think you get the idea. So I came prepared for that very reason. That's why I had the 9 tabs at the beginning stream. I knew exactly what I wanted to go over. That's why I had the timestamps prepared. That's why I was, like, specifically scrolled and, like, highlighted on things I wanted to do. I went out of my way to get all these things pulled up. I knew exactly what I wanted to respond with. As I sat down here, I read your response. I formulated my thoughts. I'll respond to this on stream. Hopefully next stream, at the beginning of it, with you. Blah, blah, blah. But, yeah. I think I explained it pretty well. Momoshiki being depressed is just a really solid bit of characterization. But at that point, I disagree. I don't think you did explain why it's a solid bit of characterization, because like I said, I don't think anything that's different is good. Whereas Ikimoto does literally anything at all, and people are just going to call it peak writing regardless, and it feels like that's what you're doing. Oh, because he's not plotting anymore, it's something different and unique for his character. Well, you're going to have to explain it in more depth than that. Saying that alone doesn't explain why it's good. That's saying why you like it. But I'm not you, so I don't understand what that means when you say it. So, okay, what you described is a fact. It isn't inherently a good thing. Why does that make it a good thing? But either way. I know you're going to say. see, that's part of the problem. You know I'm going to say whatever this is. Similar to up here or in a previous comment or whatever. You're just adding things that aren't. Oh yeah, the interpretation thing. Wherever that was. Yeah, you know I'm right about this point, Oodie. No. I don't know it, nor do I think it. You just misinterpreted what I said. Oh my gosh. But yeah. Oh, but what are you gonna say? Oh, but it makes Boruto struggle, and the story as a whole is less compelling and have less tension if the villain is a wimp. Well, no. That isn't what I was gonna say. First of all, it's not making Boruto struggle. Second of all, if the story as a whole would be less compelling if there's less tension, considering tension is one of the things that makes a story compelling. But I don't need to say that. It's just true regardless if I say it or not. But no, you don't know if I'm going to say that or not. Why would you say you know I'm going to say that? Because guess what? In the entire response I just gave, the response I formulated just now, which I delivered, was the exact same response that I had thought about when I read your reply, basically reacted for the first time 3 days ago when you made the reply. So no, I wasn't gonna say that. You're just wrong. Confidently so. Well, have you read the rest of the story? No? Then save that for later and don't jump to conclusions. So again, I'm going to say this again in a new way. I'm going to say it the same way. Then I'm going to lead to a new elaboration that I wanted to do earlier. The part 1 story is intertwined to this new direction, assuming it is a new direction. This part 2 story, at this central figure moment right here, the centerfold moment, this defining moment that changes everything, the turning point, if you dare, assuming that it even is one at all. Assuming they're going in a new direction with Momoshiki. Which, honestly, I don't know why you think that's the case based on how it ended. I don't think that's going to be the case. But either way. But, okay. So, we agree that this is a moment connecting the first part to the second part. What you're saying is this is, not can be, but is a good start to what can be the new part 2 story of Momoshiki. That's not what we're complaining about. That's not our critique. That's not what we've been saying. That's not what we're talking about. What we have been consistently saying is that this is a terrible conclusion to Momoshiki's part 1 character. This is a terrible end to the part 1 self of Momoshiki. Assuming that we're getting a new Momoshiki. Assuming we aren't, this is a terrible continuance of Momoshiki's part 1 self until we get a new part at whatever new change, turning point, direction the character will take. I'm assuming he does change at any point. And by part 1, part 2, I don't mean Naruto Next Generations to Blue Vortex. I'm not talking about the mangas. Not talking about the time skip. I'm talking about Momoshiki as a character. Momoshiki as a character, for the most part, hasn't changed in this regard. He's been this plotting, maniacal, mustache-twirling, conventional, in a sense, villain. And you're saying that this could be a turning point. I'm saying that if he continues to be the maniacal, plotting, villain, mustache-twirling, conventional, blah, 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 if he continues being that, he's still the part 1 self until he changes to something else that isn't that, like you're saying he seemingly is going to be. But with that being said, that's everything I had to say on this. I really don't like this current Momoshiki storyline. You know why. I've clearly defined why it's bad using conventional screenwriting, which you can disagree with. Your words are inherently less credible than the person with a screenwriter's degree. So I will go with the guy who has authority over you on this specific topic that he expertises in. Especially since you took it and said you disavowed it. You don't even like this area of topic. You're not only an not an expertise in it. You're not an expert in it. You don't even like it. So in a way, you are the person that Robert McKee and Herrick was saying. You're the person who's being intentionally going against it. different for different sake. Because you are going out of your way to not use structure, essentially, because you don't like it. You disagree with it. But that being said, what was I just saying before that? Well, let's go find out. This is stupid. Screenwriting, which you can disagree with. You're right. Everything I had to say on this, I really don't like this current Momoshiki storyline. You know why. I've clearly defined why it's bad using conventional screenwriting, which... Oh, yeah. So the reason that his authority matters in this regard, that his expertise, his credibility that he has over you, the reason that matters, since I will define that instead of just saying it, since you aren't me, you don't know why that means anything. Why that matters is because I live in society, and society is built on agreeing upon a certain system, set of rules, in which case, I would obviously think that, and you think it as well because you live in society. And guess what, audience? I'm pretty confident 100% of the people listening to this also live in society. That doesn't mean you have to agree with absolutely every single thing in it, but society functions and operates, and we choose to live in it. We could leave it just like the Unabomber did, disavow it. We could leave society altogether. We don't do that because we agree with it more than we disagree. I said that earlier. So that's why this does have more credibility than not. You wouldn't break it down in this specific category to see if you individually agree. You would say, because you live in a society, you agree with society more often than not. That blatantly agrees, or I guess applies to agreeing with this. So there you go. Feel free to debunk me however you want. I am ranting at this point, so thank you, Space, for clarifying that I'm doing that, in which case I will. And let me also just reach out really quick. Ikimoto and Kishimoto, it's not only Ikimoto. Well, you say that. There's a couple streams I would like to direct you to. When will you debate Jay the Great? Well, I was going to do it last Friday, but I forgot to get back with him on that, and he didn't message me either, and I don't think we've messaged each other since. I did message Kamui about it today and be like, oh yeah, we didn't do that. Well, that sucks. So I did tell Kamui about that today in DMs, but I have not got back with Jay. But I'm assuming that you know that we were planning on doing that. I'm assuming that Jay said that in a stream at some point. In which case, be sure to let him know that I'm absolutely down, and I do want to do that. We just have to figure out a time. And as long as we both remember, then it should go well. It's not something that needs to be rushed. It can happen whenever. It probably should be rushed because I think he's doing like a specific, like, not a tournament, but he's doing like something or the other where he wants to do it with like a bunch of YouTubers. And I'm assuming he did it with all the others already. And now we're like the stragglers that are almost being left behind. But no, I still want to do it. So we'll do it soon, as long as we remember. But yeah, we want to do it. Isn't the Shinju goal is to gain knowledge or something like that, unless I'm completely wrong? Or half right. I mean, that's one of their goals. It's not their only goal. But if I see Boruto and Momoshiki working together, I don't see that happening to the else. I agree. Rate my latest blog. Okay, you know what? Let's go check out K Edits' video. Why not? Their latest blue log edit. Is this the one? Is this what they wanted? Oh, this one? Well, I'm sure it's going to be copyright in terms of songs, but it'll be a great end of stream thing. So hey, Ikimoto failed. Let's check it out. Okay, you know what? I'll even do you one better. I'll do you one better. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do it like this. No, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna do this. Okay. I'm gonna give you a proper reaction. So I haven't seen Blue Lock, nor do I know this song. But K-Edits, you wanted me to do this. You've been waiting patiently. Well, I don't know if you're still here or not. You could have left right after saying that. In which case, hey, you got what you wanted anyways. All right, let's check this out. I like the editing format with the blurry background with the black pig who's freaking hype. See, villain with the blackness. Oh, it's the lines. It's almost like manga animation, and the text coming and appearing, and it's splooshing on screen. Almost like water. I used to refound the color. Did you do the band adding color, or is that someone else going? The edit food with the tempo to the music too. Reminds me of the AMV I made. I love how just like the flash in and out. Oh, I know that Da Vinci effect. Oh, with the rainbow glitch filter effect thing. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I know that took some time. Is there some what's the word for? What's the word for it? What's the word for it? I know the word for it. Come on, do these. Brain work. Not intersplicing, not flock. Place clock. I don't want to look at on my phone because I know I have it written there, but twixing? Twixing is one of the words. Hang on, I'm gonna it's a loop anyway. Okay. Let me just double check. I got a Twix. What's the editing word for this? Enter something. That's not it. Search for interpolation. That's the only thing I've written down. I don't know if that's it or not, but that's what I'm gonna go with. Interpolate. I think that's right. Interpolate. It's when you cut out all of the in-between frames so you make it one smooth, consistent frame. And I don't know if you're actually doing that or not. I'm just using the editing Da Vinci words I know. Well, I hope you like that reaction. Oh, you're doing the music effect too? With the sound? I know that takes some extra time and effort to learn. Oh, look at that. It sounds like it's drowning underwater. That's cool. And it goes back to love service. Wait for it. With the beat drop, it's gotta go in. Stay it underwater for a little bit. It's cool. Oh, it's... Oh, now it's all crunchy and dry and up in the air. Ooh, back with the hype. And at the top of the beat of the climax. Oh! Yeah, with the cool color, if I could go in Super Saiyan, it is doing the warrior pose of the forward marching, as it's the forward camera angle as well with the manga. Oh, I like it. See what other people had to say about it. Unreal, just unreal. Peak. Damn, it's Iron Man. Well, I hope you like that. Cool. I did the reaction smiley face. And if it doesn't copyright the stream, I'll leave it in. Otherwise, it'll probably be clipped out. That's why I hate Momoshiki, everyone. All right, bye. Yeah.